time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go. But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Sunday evening edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
What's up, everybody? Great to see you all here. Terrific crowd filing in, 793 strong in the YouTube chat, 596 strong on the Rumble chat. Thanks, everybody, very, very much for being here. Got a big show tonight. Got a great show tonight. A lot of fun stuff happens.
Got a really big show.
Really terrific show. Terrific show. Speaking of terrific shows, I did catch Jimmy Dore's comedy show in Cohoes, New York last night. Met several of you there. That was a lot of fun. We got our first super chat of the night from Don, who apparently was there, who says, I know some trans women with bigger balls than you, Keaton. Just kidding. We're disappointed that you did not do your stand-up at Jimmy's show last night. We still love you. Yes, so I did unfortunately have to back out last minute, which I was very upset about. And, you know, Jimmy gave me a great shout-out from the stage, and he said that I chickened out, which was a nice way of putting it. I explained to him the full reason. It's kind of some family matters. We never miss shows here.
It's a kind of eruption that comes upon you unexpectedly in your genital area.
Yeah, right.
That's all I'm going to say. Could be a month, could be a year.
Yeah, right.
All of a sudden it just breaks out, right?
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable.
I just unfortunately was not able to pull it together yesterday for, reasons I won't get into great detail about. I hate backing out of things. I absolutely hate it. We never miss a show here. I've missed 2 episodes in the history of this show, and it was both around my kid's hospitalization a couple years ago, which definitely left a mark on me and certainly a mark on my wife as well. And every once in a while, the scars from that show themselves in unexpected ways, which was the case yesterday. And so without saying any more publicly, that is why I was not able to put together my comedy sets. But I did give Jimmy the detailed explanation because I figured I owed it to him since I was bailing on him, and I hated bailing on him, and I was pissed at myself for having to. But he was super gracious about it and said, totally understand, no problem. And I was able to go to the show, and so that's how that went. He's a really solid guy. He was very, very kind to me, and I really thank him for that from the bottom of my heart. I know, from time to time when we have different takes on things, there are people who, chirp in our comment section about Jimmy, and probably people chirp in Jimmy's comment section about us and trying to start a fight and stuff. But, for reasons, like they come up last night, I always say he's a really, really solid guy. And he was a very good friend to me yesterday. And so thanks to Jimmy for that. And for a great show. It was a really great show. I mean, if he's coming to a city near you, get tickets. It was really fun. It was kind of different for him. I felt like it was a little more mellow and subdued, which gave it a great kind of intimate conversational quality. So it was just, really kind of felt more like a talk, but very funny. Very, very funny. And so it was a nice, I felt like it was a little bit of a different set for him. The new stuff that I heard was great. And so the audience loved it, and I loved it. Some really funny stuff, and just very well done. So that was a great time, and I had a great time meeting some of you guys. So that was fun. So it was a great night in Cohoes, and what a venue. What a theater. It's like this palace theater. It's like, I don't know, probably 300, 400
well,
seats.
you've been there before, right?
I'd never been to that venue before.
You've never been there?
No. I mean, I've only lived in the area for a couple of years. And because I have 3 kids, I never go.
I had every now and then actor friends that I knew would wind up doing shows there.
Oh, so you've been there?
You know, for those who don't know, I went to college in Albany.
Yeah, Russ went to college in Albany, so I guess you know that space. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I think a friend of mine was doing Christmas Carol there with freaking Wilford Brimley. As Scrooge.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it was that kind of, it's big stage, big balcony, great space. So yeah, great time was had by all. I was glad I was still able to make the show, which I was as an audience member, and glad I did. It was a great time. So definitely he's coming to, I know he's in Providence right now as we speak, actually. And then he's got dates in Buffalo. You might be there for the Buffalo show. You might still be in town.
I might still be in town.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how I feel about it.
Yeah.
See what's going on. I'll have been there for a month, and then I would have to add another couple weeks.
What's that?
I would have to add another couple weeks to my trip.
Oh, that's right, because you're going in mid-April, not end of April, right? You're going next week, right?
I'm going next Monday.
Wow. Russell will be live from Buffalo.
I'll be live from Buffalo for a month. I actually think this is going to be a very interesting time to be in Buffalo. Like, this hollowed out Rust Belt town at this moment of this trade war.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
It'll be, no, seriously, man, doing like,
yeah,
man on the street interviews during this time would be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo is what, like 3 hours from Cleveland?
The trick is finding people on the street because nobody lives there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, it's a very Midwest. I mean, Buffalo's like, what, 3 hours from Cleveland?
It's the Midwest. Yeah, it's the Midwest. I mean, it's basically the Midwest.
It's west of Pittsburgh.
Culturally, aesthetically, it's the Midwest.
That's right. All right, everybody. Well, we are going to get started. Please smash that like button and smash that subscribe button on YouTube, that follow button on Rumble. Big crowd in here to start things off. 1,400 strong in the YouTube chat, 748 strong in the Rumble chat. All right, folks. Oops, sorry. I messed that up. My bad. Let's see. Where's my stuff? Okay. All right, everybody. So you may have known yesterday there was a huge day of action throughout the country. Hands off. The hands off mass mobilization. Look at all those red dots. Looks like a measles outbreak.
Wow.
Ha. There you go. So, mass mobilization Saturday, April 5th against Donald Trump.
It's all the places, coincidentally, with the highest vaccination rates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, the reason it's everywhere throughout the country is every state capital had one. So all 50 state capitals plus a lot of major cities and a lot of states. Look, I mean, California's, just all red, the entire East Coast. Tons of events here. And this is kind of a sampling of the crowd at one of these events. There they are, the libs. They're so back. They're so back. That's what we're going to call this podcast, I think, because, they got their mojo back. They, spent a few months on the couch, stress eating and, mixing those Xanax and the Chardonnay. But now they are back in action. The Democrats tweeted out this video of all these rally crowds in major cities throughout the country.
Hands off our Social Security!
Hands up! Hands up! Hands up! Yes! Yes!
So, yes, big crowds indeed throughout the country. Those are some of the major cities. This is in a relatively small city of Concord, New Hampshire, population just 44,000. And here is the crowd in Concord, New Hampshire.
Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up!
I mean, that's a pretty big crowd for Concord, New Hampshire. I mean, what they got in Concord, New Hampshire? Apple picking, pumpkin picking. I mean, a Christmas festival. That is quite the crowd for a tiny little town. They also had one in Salt Lake City, and this will give you a nice idea of the nature of these protests. Steve Schmidt went live from the Salt Lake City hands-off protest, the Lincoln Project. Steve Schmidt, former Lincoln Project, right?
Hey, everybody. Steve Schmidt here. Standing at the Salt Lake City protest, 10,000 strong gathered here on the 5th of April in the Beehive State. This moment is happening all over America. In all 50 state capitals, hundreds of thousands of Americans have taken to the streets to protest, to assert their rights. The government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish under a Trumpian haze.
All right, that's enough of that. Hey, this will give you another idea of what this crowd was like. The Fourth Reich, with, of course, the big names of this administration in their Hitler garb. And then, of course, you notice the Ukrainian flag on the shirt there, which, the irony of protesting Nazis while standing for Ukraine is apparently lost on those folks. Lost on these folks, yes, indeed. But so this gives you an idea of what these crowds like, man. I mean, the libs are back. A lot of love for Ukraine at this rally set, so to speak. So much so that Gerard noticed on their poster, the big lib protest legit has one of the demands as hands off NATO. That's right. So it's hands off Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, blah, 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 down the line.
Put a chicken and make her gay.
Exactly, yes. And, of course, hands off NATO. Wow. I mean, controlled opposition is supposed to be a little bit more subtle than this, right? I mean, hands off NATO, wow, that's kind of giving it away, is it not? But notice among that list of hands off this, and this, the LGBTQ, the consumer protections, cancer research, public lands, veteran services, no mention of Gaza or Palestine. Not hands off Gaza, hands off Palestine. So Hashim here says, how do you organize a nationwide protest called Hands Off and say nothing about Gaza? Not even a mention. Not one line. It could have flowed seamlessly. Hands off Gaza, stop funding genocide, end all military aid to Israel. But no such demand appeared in the list. In fact, this made the rounds here. This is a working class and homeless organization that posted to their Instagram. Organizers from Indivisible had asked WHOA to speak and to table at this event, one of the hands-off offshoots. I'm assuming this was somewhere in North Carolina since this WHOA organization is based there. However, they have demanded that our speaker not mention solidarity with Palestine, and we will not participate in erasing a genocide. Yeah. That's, according to them, makes sense, given that it was not one of the demands. It seems like they deliberately avoided that because it might be too divisive or something. But God bless Code Pink. They showed up to Washington, D.C. To attend both the hands-off protests and the Free Mahmoud Khalil pro-Palestine protests. Both protests were in Washington, D.C. at the same time yesterday. They attended both, but it's good that they made a point to stop and set up at Hands Off, because here's what they had to say about this event.
So, yes to peace.
Okay, so yeah, not only did they set up a pro-Palestine little station, but they also made, as part of their plank, no NATO, which was in direct defiance of the mission statement of the rally.
No to NATO, yes to peace. So here we are at the Hands Off March at the foot of the Washington Monument. This is a march that says hands off, and we're saying hands off Palestine. We're here with this sculpture to show what is happening. The people don't seem to notice because it is nowhere in the conversation here. But what's amazing is that we've already given away a whole roll of stickers that says feminists stand with Palestine. So in their hearts it's there, but in the messaging it's not. We're here to raise up the hearts, the empathy for those people, those children, those mothers, those caregivers, those ambulance drivers, those media workers, those press people that are been murdered by the IOF, by Israel, with our tax dollars. We are here to say hands off Palestine. And while we're at it, no to NATO. NATO is a violent force that has been creating death and destruction for decades. Not hands off it, no to NATO. Yes to peace.
God bless them. God bless them. And, you know, look, I believe that they handed out a lot of feminists for Palestine there, which just shows you all the more that this was really a controlled opposition event. I mean, obviously, you had Nancy
like the Women's
Pelosi
March.
speak at one of them. Yeah, it's like the Women's March, right? Even if there is sentiment, I'm sure most of the people there are pro-Palestine to some extent, probably more casually than they should be, because, of course, a lot of the hardcore pro-Palestine people had a Washington, D.C. event to go to that day. In town. But you know, they were still out there, you know, getting the message out at what is just, I mean, you know, they just remind you how cringe they are every chance they get, do they not?
Yeah, we're going to be getting a lot of that today when we get to the Taibbi piece.
Right.
I said to a Democrat the other day, listen, the best thing you guys could do right now, tell all your politicians to go hide in a bunker somewhere through the midterms, and you follow them. You just hide, okay?
Right.
And just run them without people ever seeing them or hearing them.
Right.
That is your best shot. You do not benefit at all from people seeing what your idea of an alternative is. All you're doing is making Trump voters who might be having second thoughts feel a lot better about the choice they made every time you show up.
Hands off NATO. I mean, how sick do you have to be?
They learned nothing.
Yeah.
They learned nothing. All this shit about, oh, they've got soul searching to do. They're not capable of it, because this is the result. The modern Democratic Party is the result of decades of rot. You're talking about institutional rot from within. And you're talking about the message they projected being completely misguided for decades, so that the voters that they have now are the last voters in the world with any interest in rocking the boat. They went after these very safe, comfy, suburban, ironically, mostly white people, given that they love to virtue signal their care for all the other groups. Most of them are white. Most of them are rich. Most of them are educated. That's what they wanted. Clinton called it the wire workers. Today we call it the PMCs. It's had another name, but they knew what they wanted. Now you got them, and you have an ostensible left party that's owned by Wall Street and that's pro-war and that doesn't want to challenge institutions. There's no reason for it to exist. This is why, no matter how horrible the alternative might be, it's the line of Big Lebowski. Say what you will about National Socialism, at least it's an ethos.
Right.
It's an ethos. What is this? What is this supposed to represent? Who?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really mind-boggling. And, you know, one of the other hallmarks of controlled opposition is when they plan events like this at the same time, and in this case, in the same place.
Same day.
Right, the same day and time as the pro-Palestine event in protest, specifically with a focus, I should say, on the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil. So here's some scenes from that. So this is same day in Washington, D.C. So you can see a pretty big crowd there, pretty healthy sized crowd there. This is the video that went viral from that for a heartbreaking reason, but for good reason. A massive banner has been unveiled with the names of Palestinians killed by Israel since October of 2023.
The most merciful. I remember the image of this Marilo
it's like a painting of a tarmac.
when he was
Yeah,
You
beheaded by
realize those
American
are all
bombs.
names. Wow.
And the only thing that stayed was this trust vest and his body under.
Yep. They also had people bring children's shoes and line them up to represent all the children who have been killed. And of course, Code Pink, while they were in town for the Shit Lib March, did make a point to show up at this march as well. So here's a little bit of their footage.
With thousands of people in Washington, D.C. to call for an end to the genocide in Gaza and to call for peace throughout the world.
We are here because the escalation is happening, so the people have traveled from across the country to escalate our voices to say free Palestine.
And we're here to say no genocide, stop the genocide.
And we're just one of 1,000 marches all around the country. We're mobilizing to stop the genocide, and also we're connecting this. The genocide and the colonialism abroad always comes home, and we're seeing it come home in a big way with deportations and abductions of students.
So we need to stand up
Giving us our responsibility.
for Mahmoud and for all the students who were deported and for the people of Gaza.
We need to do everything that we can in every moment possible to stand for an end to the genocide and for a free, liberated Palestine.
Well done. Well done. So, yeah, I mean, look, like I said, when you have this many Shit Lib marches going on, it does definitely depress turnout for the pro-Palestine marches, not just in and around D.C., but, you know, if you live in, you know, upstate New York, as I do, and you're anti-Israel, but you're also anti-Trump, you may have gone to D.C. for the pro-Palestine march, but hey, there's this anti-Trump thing that's happening right around the corner, so I guess I'll go there instead. You know, that affects turnout as well. Despite that, they seem to have very good numbers at the D.C. event. My father was there. He said the turnout was good. It's a little hard to tell, you know, what the estimated numbers are, because obviously the groups will give their estimates and then the cops give their estimates. But as we could see there, I mean, they had a pretty good turnout for the Mahmoud event. Very high turnouts for the hands-off events. And, you know, this is one of those moments where you would like to intercept some of these libs and try and radicalize them as best you can. But as you see time and again, they just really make it difficult to impossible. I mean, what can you do with that? What can you do with that? I mean, they won't even put Palestine on the event. How could you not put Palestine on the event? How could you leave that off? Well, we know how they could leave that off, because the Democrats are a pro-Israel party and they don't want to touch this. Nobody wants to touch this. Nobody at town halls ever brings it up. I noticed that when I covered the primaries in New Hampshire, you know, Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, Democrats, they didn't say a peep about this unless it was brought to them by an audience question. There is just silence on this from Democratic leadership for obvious reasons. Chuck Schumer in his book says it's you know, part of his mission to keep the left pro-Israel, right? And so that's exactly what this is.
It's the same party of good little boys and girls and hall monitors that it was 6 months ago. The election didn't change that. That is who they are, to their bones. You're not going to take these suburban libs and radicalize them. This is who they are. This is how they understand politics. They defer to leadership. In the end, even if they're mad at Chuck Schumer, all it'll take is Maddow and the rest closing ranks around Schumer, and all of a sudden they'll like Schumer.
Right.
Schumer got the message. I was very angry at him, but he got the message.
Yeah, that's why I didn't bother covering this whole thing where, you know, there was a poll that came out that had AOC beating Schumer by like 19 points in Democratic primary. Yeah, that's now when they're pissed at him and they're mad at him. They'll figure out some rationale to
they will do whatever they're
welcome
told.
him
They
back
stay,
into their
they
good
stay
graces.
off Israel,
of course.
Because the signal they've got is that's a bad topic. We don't want to talk about it.
Right. That makes us, meaning the Democratic Party, look bad. So, like, even when you have people there at the event who are pro-Palestine, I mean, Code Pink said they were handing out stickers left and right, feminists for Palestine.
Well, but you know, also one of the most foaming at the mouth Zionists I know was at the Bryant Park event.
Oh, sure. Well, but this is why.
Pictures. That's another reason.
Right. They don't want to alienate them.
Is made up of these fanatical Zionists.
Right. And so they don't want to alienate them. They don't want to alienate them. But I'm saying even those with more just like lib sensibilities who are pro-Palestine, yeah, they'll take the sticker from Code Pink. But as Code Pink said, there's really no conversation. There's no conversation about it, right? Like, it's just not, you wouldn't think that a Holocaust is happening as we speak, as that event goes on, which is really just, I mean, it is just so shameful that Gaza is not on that list. I mean, it's just, it's so horrible.
Well, and that's why in the end, right, wrong, or indifferent, I have no patience for these pigs. I have no patience for their virtue signaling bullshit about trans communities and black communities and brown communities and Asian communities. I have no patience for it. You have a genocide going on right now, and you are too cowardly to speak out about it. That negates what you have to say about anything else.
Yep. 100%. No doubt about that. We got a $100 super chat from Katrina Greshner. New super chatter. Thank you, Katrina. It's very kind of you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Please take my money. I watch you two often, so I owe you money. I obviously don't agree with everything you say, but what else is new? I listened to Bad Faith and Aaron Mate on Jimmy Dore interview left economist populist on tariffs. Yes, I saw some of that Mate interview. It was good. Can we have more content like that, please, for the economically illiterate? Well, we actually do have a big segment on the tariffs coming up tonight, in fact, next. And then we're going to do another one, I think, on Tuesday. So, yes, plenty of tariff talk for you. Thank you very much for that donation. That's very kind of you. David Santucci, thanks for the $20. Hands off. We're PMCs and we're very upset. We'd like to speak to the manager. Yes. Trump made us take public transportation into the city, which we haven't done since we were in college. That's right. Thank you, David Santucci.
Have you seen my 401k?
Yeah, have you seen me? Exactly, yeah.
I'm only 16 years from retirement.
That's right. Cryosynth says, I'm down for a hands-on love-in. There you go. Thank you, Cryosynth. Hillary Hinton, Alexander Ovechkin broke Gretzky's unbreakable career goals record today, but he's clearly a Putin puppet, so fuck him. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that. Let's see. Jenna Tillis. Russell Brand got in trouble because he dated a lady with an egg allergy but didn't tell her. Warning, this brand may contain eggs. There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Best audience ever.
Best audience ever.
That's some good comedy writing, man.
That is good comedy writing.
We'll give that one to Jimmy.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we will move on. Let's go to some tariff talk, actually.
All right, so I'm gonna do a more extended breakdown on this for Tuesday. I was gonna do it tonight, but this was a little more involved than I expected. So Tucker sat down with Scott Bessent to ask him what the hell's going on with these tariffs and to put people's minds at ease. Now, I just want to...
People seem upset. People seem really upset about this. I don't know why.
Well, people are very upset. They don't seem to understand what the hell the president is doing.
What the hell's going on?
They don't know why they're losing their jobs and they can't afford anything. Can you explain it? Now, it's always funny to me with Scott Bessent because, look, man, not everybody who's a Trump supporter is a conspiracist who hates George Soros, but, 99% of them are.
That's certainly the base.
That's certainly the base. That's certainly, if your life depended on guessing if a Trump supporter was a conspiracist who hates George Soros, you certainly would guess the affirmative. So it's always funny to me that nobody complains that this is who he appointed to run the Treasury. He helped break the Bank of England, and that's really funny because that's something they always bring up about Soros, about how evil he is. He broke the Bank of England. 3 decades before he was tapped to lead the Treasury Department, Scott Bessent was asked to help break another country's financial system. Then 29 years old, Mr. Bessent, working for the financier George Soros, helped break the Bank of England with crushing trades against the British pound. He was on a small team at Mr. Soros's investment firm that in 1992 amassed a $10 billion bet that the pound was overvalued. Though the British government tried to support the currency, it wasn't able to withstand the pressure, and the pound plunged in value. Mr. Soros's fund earned more than $1 billion, along with credit and infamy, for orchestrating one of Wall Street's most audacious trades. Now, this is the same Scott Bessent that we're supposed to trust when he tells us this is all going to work out. So I just wanted to give this some context before we get into his remarks. All right, so we're going to look at a few clips, including a response from Peter Schaefer that's going around. All right, so let's see what he said.
Who thinks that these market declines are all based on the president's economic policies. I can tell you that this market decline started with the Chinese AI announcement of DeepSeek.
Right.
So the so-called Mag 7, the tech stocks, had been doing very well for about 18 months, led the market, and I think that there was kind of a real dose of reality in what was going on in AI. And I think U.S. is going to remain the leader in AI, but the AI-related stocks started coming down. So, like, if I were to analyze in my old hat, and this is the only time I'm going to talk about it, my old hat, what's happening with the market, I'd say it's more a Mag 7 problem and not a MAGA problem.
Right.
Okay. That's a pretty absurd thing to say. Now, let's take a look at the charts. He's not wrong as far as it goes, that after they announced DeepSeek, it kind of, that was about the end of January. It was about January 27th, 28th that all that came out. It kind of coasted along and started to come down. But it was fine for about a month after that. So can you really say it was a DeepSeek problem and not that they started to realize Trump's really going to impose these tariffs? You can't really say that, given that it held up for about a month after the DeepSeek stuff. A lot of the Wall Street conversation was actually, you know what, they probably exaggerated. It's probably not true. Who knows what the truth is? And they kind of kept the party going. So you want to say this is because of DeepSeek? I don't know, man. That's a pretty long lag. But what you definitely can argue is this. This happened right after the trade was announced. So to argue this is not MAGA, this is from something that happened back at the end of January, that's pretty ridiculous. You want to say that the tech stocks were overvalued? The tech stocks have been overvalued for at least a decade. So to say that the jig was up, no, nobody can really say that. Maybe yes, maybe no. But to say this has nothing to do with that when you've got a vertical line falling off a cliff as soon as Trump announces the tariffs, that's pretty absurd. Anything, Keaton?
Well, just as an aside, I mean, slight aside, I think the futures are down for tomorrow, right? Didn't that just break?
I mean, I'd be surprised if they weren't.
Yeah, pretty far.
Well, yeah, I mean, crypto's down. Bitcoin broke below 80,000. Let me see. I will tell you right.
Need Hawk Tua back.
They need Hawk Tua. Let me see. You can cut this. I'm just going to take a look. Oh, wow. Holy
yeah,
shit.
I heard they dipped quite a bit. I don't remember the figure.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so the Dow's down 369, S&P futures are down almost 4, and NASDAQ is down 479.
Wow.
That is that's not a correction, that's a crash. Like they already lost, I think, almost 10%. And I think NASDAQ did 10% in 2 days. So if you get another run like that, yeah, man, you're getting some pretty serious downside momentum. So to say, no, this is not Trump's trade policies, this is a Mag 7 drop, That's pretty typical of the level of honesty that we would expect from George Soros's old protege.
Over time, we'll have substantial tariff income in the beginning.
All right, so this is him explaining how he thinks this is all going to play out, what the theory of the case is.
Over time, we'll have substantial tariff income in the beginning. Manufacturers will build their factory here. The tariffs will drop, but the revenue from the factories, from income taxes, from all the new jobs will go up. So we'll be taking it in domestically as the tariffs drop. And why are the tariffs dropping? Because we're making it here and our trade deficit's dropping.
So you've obviously thought this through. You think that the United States has the necessary labor force for this transition?
I think we do. I think with AI, with automation, with so many of these factories are going to be new. They're going to be smart factories that I think we've got all the labor force we need.
Listen carefully to what he just said. Tucker said, are we going to have enough labor for all this? And what did he say? He didn't say, oh, yes, the American people are eager for work. They've been crowded out by illegal immigrants. They're going to staff those factories. No, he went right to AI. He went right to AI. Now, is he the only one talking like that? Can you dismiss that as a one-off? Well, no. Let's look at the first runner-up to Rabbi Shmuley for biggest purveyor of anti-Semitism in the world. He himself started talking about how the robots are going to do the work.
Is in our workers. The American workers have been given the raw deal. And what's going to happen now is we're going to build factories and we're going to train and we're going to have trade craft. We're going to do the greatest set of training ever. And our high school educated people, they're going to train to do robotics mechanics. It's kind of like a supercharged BMW mechanic, like you just can fix those robots. You can build air conditioning as an example, but that's for a fab or for a semiconductor factory. These are great paying jobs that our Americans, we're going to have 5 million of those jobs coming. And America is going to retool. It's going to do manufacturing, and robotics can sew as well. You've never seen anything like what you're going to see, the renaissance of American manufacturing coming because Donald Trump is bringing them back. He's driving them back. $6 trillion, he said today, he's got committed to America. It's unbelievable.
Okay. All right, so you got the one guy says we have enough labor because of AI. You got the other guy saying, well, it's really going to be robots working, but don't worry. Everyone's going to go to DeVry and learn how to work on robots, so it'll be fine. It'll be fine. The workers are going to work on the robots. It'll be great. It's not going to be dystopian at all.
Now, think of the absurdity of that. Think about the absurdity of that. I mean, if you're going to hire as many mechanics to fix the robots as workers that the robots are replacing, then why would you have the robots in the first place? Just have the workers do it.
It's just bullshit. It's like
makes it obvious. Yeah,
it's like when Bezos starts rambling on the launch pad about mining the moon. These guys are so rich, nobody really questions them. When that clip of Lutnick going on about Social Security and how only the scammers are going to call the two kids that they threw out there to interview them. You hear them in the background going, wow.
Right.
Wow. Nobody questions this guy. That's why he doesn't have to think before he speaks. Yeah, no, it's going to be unbelievable. Idle. The high schools are going to train them in the robotics. So what about the rest of it? What about all of this factory manufacturing? All right. So Peter Schiff, who, is nicknamed Dr. Doom. To be fair, he does tend to predict the worst. But one of the worst he did predict in a whole big-ass damn book was the housing crash in 2008. So he has some credibility when he speaks. So he got a lot of attention when he laid out pretty clearly why the idea that manufacturing is just going to move back into the United States like that is, as he calls it, a pipe dream.
Like, for example, people are talking about Nike, right? You know, Nike stock's at a 52-week low today. It's down 12%. And I hear people talk about, well, you know, because the sneakers are going to come in from Vietnam or China, where they're coming in, and they're subject to like a 40% tariff. And so Nike is going to have to jack up prices a lot. And they're saying, well, to avoid the tariffs, they could just build, you know, make the sneakers here. Well, how are they going to do that? The factories don't exist. And in order for Nike to build a shoe factory, who knows how long it's going to take. Plus, you got to put together all the supply chains domestically, because you can't import, you know, the leather, and you can't, you know, whatever. And then you have to have the workers that know how to do it. They're not here because we're not making shoes here. 98% of our shoes are imported. It's not just Nike, it's everybody. We don't make anything anymore. The whole industry is gone. It would take years and years to bring it back. But Nike's not going to do it. Why is Nike going to invest money in building a factory here in America? For what reason? I mean, they have factories in Vietnam. They can still sell Nikes in America. They just won't sell as many because the price will be a lot higher. So America will be a smaller part of their margin, by their market. But now they can take those sneakers that they're not selling in America and sell them in China, sell them someplace else. Maybe they'll get a little less money than they were getting selling here, but that's better than building a factory here and being completely uncompetitive. Plus, Nike still has to sell shoes all around the world. Why? They're going to build a factory here where the only place in the world anyone would buy the sneakers is in America? Because it's going to be an uncompetitive factory. So it's not going to happen. This is just all a pipe dream. The president is being ill-advised by a bunch of economic ignoramuses.
Now, he's certainly not the only one saying that, but he boiled it down probably the best of anybody that I saw. And that is just common sense. Even Trump himself is conceding, it'll take a year and a half, 2 years, which, what does that mean? It means 5 years, 10 years. You got to get a factory designed. You got to get it approved. And as they keep dropping, when they say the soft part out loud, these are going to be AI modern factories with robotics. That's going to take even longer to build. You're not talking about an old coal-fired plant where you're making Model Ts. You're talking about very technologically complex buildings that have to be built. So
we have to build the robots, and then we have to teach the people how to fix them so that we can give them jobs, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. So what Bessent was saying at the beginning there was, we're going to make all this money off tariffs. We're going to make all this tariff money. We're going to make hundreds of billions of dollars from tariffs, but then people are going to build these factories. So then the tariffs will go down, but the revenue will go up because the factories are here. It's a cockamamie scheme from a party that is doing everything possible to avoid doing the obvious, taxing the rich, taking the money, and investing it in infrastructure. It's really not that hard to see. You want to bring manufacturing flooding back, raise the capital gains rate, and lower the tax rate on manufacturing. A big part of the reason all the money flooded into financialization is because you pay lower taxes. Why would you not? Right. Why would you not put the money? Why go through all the headaches of building a factory if you make more money off just parking your money in bonds and stocks? Why would you do that? Just change the tax code. I'm not talking about that. It would cost their friends too much money. Now, here's an irony of all this. Surging costs complicate plans for new U.S. factories. Talk about shooting yourself in the dick. Trump's tariff announcement threw a wrench into factory builders' plans and complicates a years-long government effort to reinvigorate U.S. manufacturing. Companies are double-checking the numbers on planned factories or halting them altogether. Tariff-swollen building costs helped to kill a $300 million plastics recycling plant in Erie, Pennsylvania that had been in the works for 4 years. International Recycling Group, helmed by CEO Mitch Hecht, said Thursday it was canceling the factory partly because new duties on material and imported machinery had created, quote, expectations of substantially higher project development costs than anticipated. The past 3 years have seen an explosion of U.S. factory investment, driven in part by billions of dollars in Biden administration subsidies for manufacturers supporting the semiconductor and electric vehicle industries, as well as renewable energy projects. Companies have also sought to shorten supply chains that became strained during the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump told reporters Thursday that it might take several years to achieve his goal of onshoring manufacturing. So, okay, we are not Joe Biden fans here, but the Build Back America part that actually passed, the biggest complaint was it's not nearly enough. Not nearly
Sure.
enough.
Yeah.
You know, the basic idea, put money into manufacturing, of course, like who could object to that? It's a statement on our system that the amount of money they passed to do it is probably about the most that you could get. Now, instead of Trump going in, he's got a completely compliant Congress who are not willing to do their job. We essentially have a king. These tariffs are in all likelihood illegal. The only way a president can arbitrarily announce a tariff like this is to claim an economic emergency. The case they're making for it being an economic emergency is that the emergency started in 1935. That's not an emergency. That's not an emergency. So these are illegal, but who's going to hold them accountable? You have a Congress and a Senate that's not willing to fulfill its oversight role and not willing to exercise its power of the purse. So you've got a king. You got a king. You got a guy who can arbitrarily do whatever he wants because the other branches of government are not doing their job. If he wanted to use this power in a way that made sense, he would say, yeah, Biden, he had half a brain, but that wasn't a bad idea. But you know what? We're going to make it bigger, beautiful. We're going to build back better than better. We're going to make it great again, right?
Yeah.
But I don't see that coming. All right. So one of the weirdest things about all this is they keep praising Reagan. He brings up Reagan uninvited, I think 3 times in this interview. So this is just one of them.
So I believe that this is going to work, just like President Reagan believed that supply side economics was going to work. But what I do know that the old system wasn't working.
I think that's right.
And if you look at a system that's not working, you got to be brave to change it. So,
okay. All right. And this is very typical of the Trump team where a lot of people get fooled because, I mean, sure, the old system wasn't working. What he's not telling you is Reagan was the John the Baptist of that system and Bill Clinton was its Jesus.
Right.
Reagan built that system. Yeah, he set the country in this direction. And in many ways, they're giving away the game by praising Reagan because what they're proposing is really Reaganism on steroids. What do you do if you are if you want to run an economy with as little taxes on the rich as possible and with no government investment in the population? Well, you have to justify that by cultivating an almost fanatically religious belief in supply side economics. Now, unlike at Reagan's time, we now have decades of proof that this does not work. And yet he invokes supply side economics, remarkably invokes this as a justification for what they're doing, which supposedly is going to help the working class. So here's a little bit. This was written actually in Trump's first term in 2017. A little recap of Reagan's contribution to the state of affairs today. The problem didn't start in the 1990s. It started in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan, a hero of the Trump administration, was president, and neoliberal economics were first making their mark on policy. Reagan and his ilk distrusted government and believed that the private sector could make the best decisions when left on its own. This ideology ultimately led to the financialization of the U.S. corporation, the process of putting shareholders first, often at the expense of workers and consumers, and its emergence as an actor that takes resources from the economy rather than creating them. This, combined with a government zeal for lowering taxes rather than spending, means no one, not the government and not the private sector, is investing enough in America to keep the economy strong across social classes. In short, government cuts and changes in how corporations operate mean American workers are getting screwed by their own government and their own employers. So this is what I mean when I say what they're doing is Reaganism on steroids, because what Reagan did made it more profitable for companies to invest in financial instruments, to buy back their own stock, than to invest in workers. And because of the fanatical tax cuts of the rich, you don't have the income to reinvest in the economy. This is how we got here. They're just tripling down on what's already been done. And you're seeing some people say, well, but Wall Street's losing a lot of money. They lost a lot of money in the Depression. Did that create employment?
Right.
Now, on Tuesday, I'm going to get more into the nuts and bolts of this. That is beyond the scope of today, the financialization of the economy. But moving along on trickle-down economics, so how did that work out over the course of Reagan's term? The share of income held by the top 1% increased significantly, while the bottom 90% saw their share decline. Between 1977 and 1989, the wealthiest 20% saw their pre-tax income increase by 29%, while the poorest 20% saw their pre-tax income shrink by 9%.
Yep.
From 1981 to 1990, the change in mean family income ranged from a loss of 0.1% annually for families in the lowest quintile to a gain of 2.1% annually for families in the highest quintile. The top 5% of families saw their income increase at a rate of 3.2% annually from 1981 to 1990. It was really with Reagan that you made this break with the New Deal and started to construct the hellscape we live in today. By invoking Reagan repeatedly, they're really telling you what their values are and what kind of an economy they believe in. Ironically, though, they do not have any interest in what the Gipper had to say about tariffs.
At first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity.
Okay, and I think as many people are pointing out about this, this is part of the problem. Reagan remembered what happened the last time we passed these kinds of tariffs, Smoot-Hawley, where 68% drop in exports struck the country, and we drove other countries, other trading partners, to create economic blocks to trade amongst themselves to make up for the tariffs we had imposed, which we're starting to see now. Canada didn't pull it back then. Same thing. We imposed these big tariffs on Canada. What did Canada do? They opened their markets to the UK, and with the UK, they created basically a free trade zone with the other Commonwealth countries. As we'll see, this is what you're starting to see in Asia already. Now, Reagan, temperamentally, was the kind of guy you would think would like the idea of tariffs, but he experienced them. He actually lived through them. So this was his take on it. Anything before we continue?
No, well, I mean, look, you saw the numbers there, the Reagan era. They speak for themselves. I mean, they're saying they're going to
he thinks supply side economics
robotics.
What does that
I
tell
mean,
you?
it's not. Yeah, there's no. I don't understand what the theory is of the case. Even if you were to get this manufacturing up and running in a year, which is impossible. I mean, it's just totally like what they're talking about is just impossible.
Of course,
and
of course.
Even if it
year
were
and a half,
impossible,
2 years, that's nuts.
That's insane.
You're
even
destroying the building projects that are already in progress with the tariffs.
Right. And I would say even if that wasn't insane, you're doing this at a time when the working class is already decimated and the middle class is already squeezed.
And you're cutting
to the point where they
services.
have no right. And you're cutting social services. Like they have no time for this transition. That's what guys like Bill Ackman are saying, which we'll get to in the next piece. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Tucker asked him about China.
How is China as a nation going to, I mean, this is such a big challenge. It's directly in their face. It's about every country on the globe, but it's really more than any other country about China, I think it's fair to say. How are they going to respond? What's their retaliation look like?
Well, I don't know if they can retaliate for a couple of reasons.
I'm just going to point out, I believe this interview was done on April 3rd. It's what happened on April 4th. So
34%.
Apparently, they figured out a way to retaliate by slapping a 34% tax on all U.S. imports, but we'll continue.
If you look at the history, and I used to teach economic history, and when you look at the history, we are the debtor nation.
Yes.
We have the trade deficits. The surplus nation is in the weaker position because the Chinese business model, and Tucker, by the way, the Chinese business model and the economy are the most unbalanced, imbalanced in the history of the modern world. We've never seen anything like this in terms of their export level relative to their GDP, relative to their population. So I think it is going to be very difficult for them to try to change the model. They're in a deflationary recession/depression right now. They're trying to export their way out of it, and we can't let them do that. But over the next few years, they may have to come around because I think their business model is broken. I think President Trump's broken their business model with these tariffs.
So you're describing, the famous scenario where if you take a bank loan, the bank is in charge. They can repossess whatever you borrowed against. But if you take a big enough loan, you're kind of in charge of the bank.
Exactly. And they've just got such a big deficit with us that
they need our markets.
They can't survive without them.
Okay. So that's his theory. I can't say if that's incorrect, that China can't survive without it. I can tell you that even before these tariffs passed, in anticipation of these tariffs passing, Trump has accomplished the impossible. I will give him that. He got South Korea, China, and Japan to get together to create a trade bloc. These are people who have a millennium-long history of hating each other's guts. The Japanese don't like the Koreans, vice versa. China has never forgiven Japan for World War II. But hey, man, Trump got them to the table, so kudos. I'll give him that. He's making Asia great again. Is he right that we're too big to fail and China just cannot afford to do without our market? Well, as I said, he gave this interview the day before they slapped the U.S. with 34% tariffs. Now, if you were to ask him, and he may have said this in interviews subsequently, he probably thinks it's a bluff, or in the end, they're going to have to cave in. I think the arrogance of the Trump team is to assume that they can muscle everybody. China doesn't think in terms of years. They don't think in terms of decades. They think in terms of centuries. if they need to outlast this, they will. Also remember, there is a long and ugly history of the West imposing its will on China, and they still remember the Opium Wars, and it defines a lot of their dealings with us. The idea that you're going to deal with China in a very high-handed and humiliating way, and China will not turn around and say, you know what, we're going to have to go through some hardship for a while, but in order to preserve our society and our independence, we're going to break you by not giving in, and we're going to ride this out. That idea does not seem to occur to them, even though that's very consistent culturally with what we know of China.
Well, yeah, and there's no accounting for that. I thought the same thing. I mean, forget about centuries. We think in terms of days, weeks, months at the longest.
Quarter,
at the longest,
the
we think of the quarter. We think of right. So we think in terms of 90-day periods, which really means you're thinking day to day. Really means you're following the trends day to day. And so yeah, I mean, I would not bet that they are as dependent on us as he says, for reasons that you said. You know, I think they're playing a long game. They're willing to suffer much more than we are. That does become just a cultural difference there, which I think gives them an edge. And the world has been figuring out ways to work around us for a while now. And Joe Biden really accelerated that in a big way with his disastrous foreign policies and weaponization of the dollar.
Yes.
So, yeah, no,
Yes.
I don't think there is a safe assumption in that way anymore. And that is the arrogance of these people. And that ultimately is why I don't really think that the deep states, for all the talk, was especially terrified of Trump coming back. Because ultimately, just as Joe Biden does, Donald Trump believes in the United States as the rightful hegemon in the world. And as long as you're on board with that, I think they can pretty much work with you.
The best, and I'll get into this more on Tuesday. Here, we just got into why everything that Bessent said here is BS, whether intentional or not. I've seen more than one respectable economist theorize that overall this is part of a plan to have their cake and eat it too, by weakening the dollar but preserving it as the reserve currency by forcing nations to peg their currency back to the dollar as in the Bretton Woods era in exchange for our lowering our tariffs and giving them military support. Like I said, we'll cover that in more detail on Tuesday. I'm not going with the assumption that you might get on MSNBC that they're just crazy assholes without a plan. I think they have a plan. I don't think they're really telling you what it is in interviews like this. But looking at everyone who's been parsing it out, that seems to be the most reasonable conclusion. That they're using the tariffs to create chaos, to force people to join a dollar zone.
Right. Yep, that makes sense. 3,132 strong in the YouTube chat. 25. Great crowd in here tonight. Please smash that subscribe button, everybody, and smash that like button. We are well over 666 likes already. All right.
It's early for that.
It is. It is. Got a big crowd in here tonight. Smash that subscribe button, everybody. Coming up on 100,000 subs. Getting there. Over 92. So thank you all so much. Fat Not So Fat, thanks for the $9.99. I'll be in Indian Head, Maryland. I told my boss I will fly in Richmond. Reagan has too many close calls. Donnie crashing the market and begging the Fed to cut interest rates is top-tier comedy. That's right. Nick Wesley, Lib's trying to resurrect the I told you so. Shake my head. Yeah, I saw some of that going around. Dave Santucci, to be honest, there were a lot of signs in support of Rameisa Ozturk in Boston, so that was good. That is good. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. Janice
But
Anderson.
she had a funny laugh.
Yeah, right.
That's the butter emails this time.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Wonder how many, Janice Anderson says, wonder how many protest participants were paid. Dems don't have any real activists backing them anymore. Their primary voters lack critical thought. Yeah, I don't think they were paid. I mean, the paid protester thing is always overestimated, and I love how some of the right-wingers say they were bussed in. What do you mean they were bussed in? Yeah, some organizations rent buses and send them to the protest. Yeah. I mean, that's how a lot of organizations do things. Laura Loomer tweeted out, they're getting off a bus and they all leave at the same time. Well, they all leave at the same time because the bus leaves at the same time. Yeah, so real piece of.
Wait, what do you want them to go on the Batmobile? Like, what are you talking about?
It's crazy.
What is that?
So
the buses don't even have a sidecar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's controlled opposition, but look, man, the libs, there are a lot of libs out there, and, they have the money to, drive into D.C. and make a weekend out of it and, brunch and the whole thing. Kuznetsky Bessent, great show again tonight, guys. F both fake U.S. political parties. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bessent.
Thank you.
Ben Jammin, I like that name. Thanks for the $10. Candace Owen and Zanian Carroll just did a podcast together. I was surprised to hear them completely rip into RFK and Donald Trump, and even suggest Trump might be a psyop. Yeah, I just hadn't had a chance to get to through that. I started listening to the first 15 minutes of it. I will finish it though. Fat Not So Fat says hands off neoliberalism march. Thank you. Let's see. Eric Rousseau says that baptism didn't quite wash all of Russell Brand's naughty sins, and he will burn in lib hell. Oh, thank you, Eric Rousseau. Wilfred Brimley is the poor man's M. Emmett Walsh, or vice versa. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Remember the last time this happened, we got more do-nothing Dems and a senile president. Color me not hopeful. Yep, don't blame you there. That's for sure. Ernest Nelson says, I want to put my hands on NATO. Specifically, I want to crush its windpipe under my thumbs. Thank you, Ernest. Appreciate that. Okay, what do we got here? My mom, says Furrows Queen, was furious at the collapse of the pound. She made a fortune swapping money around, legally, probably, chasing interest rates. Not Elon bucks, but still she was smug. Hope you're all okay, DD and Chad. Hope you're okay, Furrows Queen. She would sit watching Judge Judy with an iPad and a laptop with all her accounts open. Hope Russell's ready for the Q&A. I have a lot of questions for him. There we go. Thank you, Furrows Queen. Yes, call in. Monkey Rotary.
Get your Arnold sound drop ready.
What's that?
I have a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Yeah, exactly. We should make that one. All righty. Let's move on. While we're paused here, I want to take a second to give you guys a word from one of our dissident sponsors, which is an album called Dogmatics by an artist called A Bard and a Guitar. So Dogmatics is a musical retelling of the Jonah fable in a modern-day setting. This satire album follows a bard and a guitar tasked by God to help the people of a city whose politics he can't stand, featuring reinterpretations of All the Girls Go Crazy, No Irish Need Apply, and Love Me, I'm a Liberal. Find it on most music streaming platforms by searching for Dogmatics by a Bard and a Guitar, or you can follow this custom link that Jake made for us, dudissidents.com/bard. Great musical album here. You should go check that out. Just type in that link and give it a listen. You can also find it on the streamers, of course, as well. So please go give that a listen and support our dissident artists who help support this show. That's dudissidents.com/bard. By the way, shout out to Jake in the booth tonight. Thanks for being here, Jake. Appreciate that very much. All right, we will move on right along here. Okay, this is a fun one. This is a funny segment. So obviously, we just did a pretty healthy size segment about the tariffs. So that'll be clipped separately from this, but to give you a general idea of what the end of the week was like. Unusual Whales posts on April 4th here. Call your therapist, with a graphic representation of the effect of these Trump tariffs. A whole lot of red, a whole lot of market panic, a whole lot of people's 401ks going down, and not good, believe me, not good. And, okay, file this under imagine if a Democrat tweeted this out after a market pummeling like this. Donald Trump tweets out, "Only the weak will fail."
What is best in life, Conan?
Yeah.
To crush your enemies.
Only the weak will fail. It's a great thing to tweet out after you've just completely tanked the stock market.
Well, you also he tweeted out going golfing, right?
Yeah, and golf, yeah, and his golf trip. That's right. But hey, MAGA faithful means MAGA faithful, especially when you are among the MAGA influencer elites on X and on YouTube. So Benny Johnson says, so based. Yeah, he loves this. And Benny Johnson has a new outlook on life that he wants to share with you all. Now that the market's going to hell, losing money means nothing. Digital ones and zeros. In the end, you won't miss any of it. So he's all of a sudden he's like a 60s kid. He's a big hippie all of a sudden. Benny Johnson. Let's hear some of his new musings on the meaning of life and how losing money doesn't mean anything.
Losing money costs you nothing. This is just the reality of life. You're gonna, were you young and dumb? How much money did you lose? Everyone loses money. Everyone loses money. It costs you nothing. In fact, it builds quite a bit of character. In fact,
I mean, most people when they're young and dumb don't really have much money to lose. I mean, that in and of itself just points
Benny
to a certain
Johnson
privilege.
just blew my mind, man. That was trippy, man.
It was deep.
That was trippy.
You learn a lot of lessons actually by losing money. Losing your character costs you everything. Losing your country costs you everything. There are things you can't get back. The government can print more money, and it will. Sadly, that's just the reality. It's fugazi. It's fugazi. It's just so there's a
it's
boom
fake.
and a
There's no
bust
such thing as
every
money.
10 years.
Right.
And it's been that way since the invention of modern markets in the 1600s. The Dutch crash of 1649. You ever heard of it?
Now is
You
he
ever hear
talking
of the
about
Dutch
tulip
crash
mania?
of 1649, idiot? What about that? You think you have it hard? You ever even hear of the Dutch crash of 1649? I learned about it 10 minutes before I went on the air.
I mean, these people are really taking the masks off.
Oh, yeah.
It's really a mask off.
It's amazing.
The government will print more money. Okay, so are the people losing their retirement now going to get that money?
I thought you
think
guys were
so.
against printing money.
Yeah, I thought you were against printing money.
Yeah, and we'll print more of it. It's fugazi.
Sadly, but your guy's in charge now.
Right.
So why are they going to print more money?
You shouldn't have to. Right.
You shouldn't have to, right? I thought you were against that.
Right.
It's just the way that it works. It's the way that monetary policy has always worked. There's going to be ups and downs, especially as the table
Ups and downs, complicated case, Ma. A lot of ins, a lot of
If
outs.
you lose the character of your country, if your town gets hollowed out, give me that photo of that town, man. Give me the photo
now I
give
gotta
me the
put on
photo
my
of that
sad
town
voice.
in West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Your town gets hollowed out, and your entire neighborhood gets addicted to opioids, and your steel mill shuts down, and your farmers can't grow crops, and there's no more cattle ranchers, there's no more cowboys.
Then what happens? They run out of money?
with a Schmendrick swinging it in a girl's bathroom.
Well, yeah, what happens when all that happens? They run out of money, and that's a problem, right?
They run out
they
of
don't
money,
have money
yeah.
anymore, right? No?
There's no more
But
fishers.
that doesn't matter. You just make more.
Yeah,
it
you
builds
just make more.
character.
It builds character. It's good. It doesn't mean anything. You're not actually losing it. Money's actually not real.
Yeah.
There's no more workers, and we're completely and totally dependent upon slave labor peasants across Asia to make every good and service and pharmaceutical. Then you've actually lost your country, and then we are the slaves. There you go. This is West Virginia, and it's so sad that this was a factory that provided thousands of honest, good-hearted, steel-working jobs for our fellow countrymen.
Yes, and when those jobs left, people went broke.
Yeah,
and
they didn't have money.
The towns became immiserated. Yes, they did. They didn't have money.
It's a fugazi.
Yeah, it's a fugazi. It's zeros and ones. That's all it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was ripped. The guts of it got ripped out and shipped by people like Mitch McConnell so that they could make a couple extra points in
People
their
like
portfolio.
Ronald Reagan.
Right.
To get stock swaps with Pan-Asian countries.
They broke
and
the
they sold
unions.
out their countrymen, and I call that traitors.
He's not going to mention that.
I think that's the definition of a traitor. You can lose money. You can lose points in your portfolio. It costs you absolutely nothing. You won't miss them when you're dead. Nobody ever had their net worth carved onto their tombstone.
Wow.
Well, I mean, look, this is part of what they're all doing here. They're acting as if Wall Street are the only losers in this, when obviously
Yes.
a tariff, by definition, is a regressive tax on consumers, because it obviously, if it affects all consumers, it affects the people with less money more because they have less money. So it's a greater fraction of their overall net worth. But he's not the only one. We have more, another similar take, but go ahead.
Not only that, all of a sudden, they're all Occupy Wall Street alumni. All of a sudden, they found out that the top 1% own most of the stocks. All of a sudden, they're very concerned about that. But what they're using that to promote the idea of is, well, it doesn't affect normal people. That's like saying the top 1% have most of the money. So if all the money's gone, it doesn't affect most people.
Right.
Just because
exactly,
they're hoarding more money doesn't mean everyone doesn't have money. 56% of the population have money in stocks. You just have this disproportionate hoarding in stocks like you have in all assets.
Well, you got pensions,
among the upper
401ks,
1%. Doesn't mean it only hurts them. It hurts them the least, because if you got $100 billion, a big deal if you got $1 billion. You can't get by with $1 billion. Not going to go hungry with $1 billion. With the people who have their money in retirement, okay, suppose you think it's all going to work itself out. What about people who are retiring now? What about people who are retiring in the next few years?
Of course. Well, I mean, let's for some clarification on that, because that kind of came out of left field from Benny Johnson there. So let's see if he's spoken about these kinds of issues in the past. Oh, yes, he has. So Pisco finds some links. Benny Johnson says stocks and money don't matter anymore. Postmodern Marxists are now in control of Trump media. So yeah, there's a thumbnail from Benny Johnson's YouTube channel. Kamala crash, stock market, crypto collapse, global recession, world on fire. Trump was right. Yes, that is from June of 2024. See, he seemed to think money was real back then. He seemed to think money mattered back then. Money mattered a whole lot. Look, he even has that really shocked look on his face that he puts in the thumbnail. We should start putting those shots of us in our thumbnails. We'd do better. Ooh. Yeah. You. Yeah, exactly. And look, he doubles down. He puts this meme up. It's not about the money. There's a man sitting at his office job getting tired. And then look, just as he's exhausted, when his kids jump into his arms at the end of the day, he gets rejuvenated. Of course, what he's not telling you is that the working class doesn't go home to their kids and kick off their shoes and have dinner ready that the wife cooked them. The working class gets home from their day job and they jump in an Uber and they drive until 10:30 at night and come home bleary-eyed, exhausted when their kids are already in bed. And then sometimes their wife has to go work an overnight shift. So, once again, I mean, it is so clownish. Like, it's so shameless. It's unbelievable. Now, for a slightly less ridiculous take, a slightly less cartoonish take, but I think an equally delusional one, here's Batya Ungar Sargon, the self-described now MAGA lefty. It's amazing how now is when so many of these people decided to jump on the Trump bandwagon. Like a guy like Cenk, who's part of this panel, he doesn't talk in this. In 2017, when there was actual, valid reason to think that there may be some coalition building to do with the MAGA base, it was Russia. He's a Putin puppet. And now that Trump has just gone completely mask off, fascist, deportations, crushing pro-Palestine speech, consolidating wealth, and now it's hey, maybe we could now the MAGA lefties see a lane. But here's Batya Ungar Sargon saying essentially what Benny Johnson said, and like I said, a less cartoonish presentation, but I think equally diluted.
Problem. We all agree that the deindustrialization of America led to the downward mobility of the American working class deaths of despair, people working multiple jobs and not being able to afford the American dream. We all agree that it is deeply unfair for the American middle class to be bearing the burden of unfair tariffs from other countries. We all agree that it is great for the president to have leverage in order to demand reasonable things, like that countries stop allowing fentanyl to murder 100,000 Americans every year, and that Mexico do its part to police its own border. And yet when somebody has the courage to show up and say to Wall Street, screw you, I am waging war. I'm waging class warfare on behalf of the American working class. And you elites in Wall Street, you do what you need to do, because I'm not going to stop fighting for the American working class. Suddenly, everybody is sitting around going, oh no, the stock market
surrendered
the
to the
stock
communists.
Market looks like that because the rich are punishing Trump for siding with the neglected and humiliated American working class over them. We have already seen these tariffs work, Pierce. The number of people crossing the southern border is at 0. Fentanyl is at record lows for the last 10 years. We have already seen $1.2 trillion in manufacturing invested in this country since January 21st. So they have already worked. Now, how long is Wall Street going to keep trying to punish this president for standing the American working class? I don't know, but I can tell you that the view from the street is people cannot believe that there is a president who is working for them.
Yeah, that's the view from the street. That's the view from the street, all right.
Bark at the moon. So we call barking at the moon, man. You got to remember, most of these people, they're not activists. They're in show business.
Right.
Being very emotional like that, that's part of the gig.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, that's the kind of take you would give. All of this, it's the kind of take you would give when you just assume that capitalism is inevitable, unchangeable, right? I mean, the idea that this constitutes class war on behalf of the working class, I mean, it's just absurd. It's just absurd.
Yeah. This is what class analysis looks like if your core assumption is that you can't fundamentally change this system.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is an attempt. I think they are sincerely trying to bring back manufacturing jobs without doing any of the things you would need to do to bring back manufacturing jobs. They don't want to tax their own class. They don't want to raise taxes on their class. They don't want to use government money to subsidize industries. Like they're talking about these countries do tariffs, which, as we'll get into Tuesday, it's not true. They just took the trade deficits and called it a tariff. It's not actually the tariff rates these countries have. But okay, going with their premise, they have these tariffs. You know what else they do? They invest a lot of money in their industries. That's it. That's why China looks like Star Trek and America looks like Brazil.
Right, exactly. All right, so that was the online commentariat. Now let's go to Fox News. Judge Jeanine Pirro says, I don't care about my 401k.
And you know what? I don't really care about my 401k today. You know what? Not that I can afford it. Not that it isn't important.
Oh, yeah,
not that I'm not at a point in my life when I should be worried about my 401k because I am. But this is what I believe.
Go hungry,
I believe in this man. And I believe that what we're seeing now with his bringing in $1 trillion in business and manufacturing and companies moving back to the United States.
Wow. I mean, yeah, this is really going to be quite something. I mean, there's going to be a real reckoning when the pain of this is really felt. And I think we're only getting started here. But the gaslighting, I mean, how long can you gaslight people? You can't gaslight people when they're broke, when they can't afford Fox News anymore, when they have to cancel their cable, right? Because they they have no breathing room left.
All right, look, in the only Nixon can go to China spirit, you all know I'm very skeptical about collectivist kind of economic projects, although I'm more open to them than I used to be, but I have a lot of questions about it. But listen, every time I hear somebody like Jeanine Pirro speak like that, I say, You got to give it to the Chinese, man. Like, they basically grabbed everyone like Janine Pirro and threw them out into the fields and made them work for 10 years.
And re-educated them.
Yeah. Wow. Like, come on, man. You have to admire that. Whatever your view is on economic systems, you got to give it up to them.
Yes. Indeed. Now, Bill Ackman has some advice for Donald Trump about this. So this is sort of another aspect of the COPE here. Bill Ackman offers these opinions on X, which are really obviously meant as instructions from a very obviously a very wealthy, very influential man. He wrote these very lengthy essays about the colleges that had to get rid of their presidents and crack down on the protesters, as if they were just musings when really they were blueprints. So here's Bill Ackman chiming in with, you know, what he would like to perhaps see happen, not pushing anyone around at all. You know, it's not like he tagged Donald Trump or anything. One would have to imagine that President real Donald Trump's phone has been ringing off the hook. The practical reality is that there is insufficient time for him to make deals before the tariffs are scheduled to take effect. I would therefore not be surprised to wake up Monday with an announcement from the president that he was postponing the implementation of the tariffs to give him time to make deals. President Trump has gotten the world's and our trading partners' attention and elevated the importance of resolving an unfair tariff regime that has harmed American workers and decimated our industrial base over many decades. This is a critically important issue that needs to be resolved, and we finally have a president committed to getting this done. The problem, however, can't be resolved in days, so why wouldn't a pause make sense to give the president time to properly resolve this critical issue and to allow companies large and small the time to prepare for changes in their supply chains? Wonder what that might mean. The risk of not doing so is that the massive increase in uncertainty drives the economy into a recession, potentially a severe one. One thing is for sure, Monday will be one of the more interesting days in our country's economic history. Yeah, translate to, please stop. The market's about to tank. That's what he's saying there. Please call it off, right? But he can't just come out and say that. He has to put it in, you know, op-ed form. But that's his method of dealing with this. Now you are getting some pushback. Ben Shapiro, of course, is very, very angry that Israel was being tariffed.
Zero tariffs on any American goods. The Trump administration hit them with a 17% tariff anyway, claiming that they had a 33%. Yesterday, Israel announced zero tariffs on any American goods. The Trump administration hit them with a 17% tariff anyway, claiming that they had a 33% tariff rate on American goods, which clearly is not true. Why? Because it turns out that we buy more stuff from the Israelis than the Israelis buy from us. Shocker. They're a smaller country. We're a giant market. Not a giant shock, as it turns out. So this is pretty crazy. I have friends, for example, who import product to the United States. And
all right, we don't need more.
AOO.
Yeah. So he's got his problems. And here's Ted Cruz. Tariffs are a tax on consumers, and I'm not a fan of jacking up taxes on American consumers. Ted Cruz. Yeah, the down ballot Republicans, as if they don't have enough to worry about. Where you have shit libs flooding Concord, New Hampshire, and Salt Lake City, right? That's not a big enough warning sign. Now they have this on their plates. They've been speaking out against this, a great many of them, including Ted Cruz, who points out the obvious truth here, which is that tariffs are a tax on consumers.
Is our trading partners jack up their... If the result is our trading partners jack up their tariffs and we have high tariffs everywhere, I think that is a bad outcome for America. Tariffs are a tax on consumers, and I'm not a fan of jacking up taxes on American consumers. So my hope is these tariffs are short-lived and they serve as leverage to lower tariffs across the globe.
Now, as we speak, it is Sunday night. There apparently have been some offers on the table from different countries. But obviously, I mean, first of all, the big one has to be China. I mean, China, that's Corinthians 2 right there. That's the whole ball game, as they say. And so too little, too late in terms of averting a market disaster tomorrow, Monday. So that's today for those watching the clip. That is... That is MAGA world right now, from the online influencers to the MAGA lefties like Batirangar Sargon, to the Shapiros, to the Ted Cruzes, to the billionaire string pullers. You know, a lot of cope and a lot of angst. Not good. Believe me, not good.
Okay, so I'm gonna save most of this for a more extended piece on Tuesday. But a lot of people are saying, well, if Trump's not for the working class, why is he doing this to Wall Street? Is this pissing off the rich? It's pain for now for them. But in the end, they're trying to rejigger things in a way that will cement the system as we have it. It's the opposite of FDR. FDR said he was creating the New Deal, not to end capitalism, to preserve it.
To save
well,
it,
you
yeah.
could to save it. You could say that Trump is doing this not to destroy the oligarchy, but to save it. These guys, this is what I meant earlier when I said it's a misinterpretation to think they don't have a plan here, that they just don't understand, that George Soros's protege doesn't understand how globalism works or how financial markets work. They saw that the world is de-dollarizing, that decline is well underway, and this is a Hail Mary pass that is very unlikely to succeed, even on its own terms, to preserve the dominance of the United States and the dollar by forcing these countries to continue to use the dollar as the reserve currency in exchange for lowering the tariffs. Like, yes, is this all basically threatening them to force them to come to the negotiating table? Yes, but in the end, that's not gonna end the system. That's going to shore up the system. Now, theoretically, you're not going to have what you have now, where one of the reasons all of these asset prices are as inflated as they are is because with that deficit, with those dollars they get, they plow those dollars back into American real estate, bonds, and financial services. So this is part of why all of this is crashing out, because markets are always ahead of the curve. They're anticipating 6 months, a year from now, 2 years from now.
Yeah.
They're saying all that money's not going to be coming back from overseas into American financial instruments. It's going to deflate the market. All of that is true. The idea that all of this is going to lead to onshoring does not track. All you're going to do in their theory is you're going to preserve the dominance of the dollar. You're going to force our allies to essentially become vassal states that peg their currencies to the dollar in exchange for American protection, military protection, and lower tariffs. The idea that all of a sudden factories are going to come back to the United States is absurd. Why would they?
Well, yeah. No, I mean, I think that's right. I think that's right. And the other part of this, too, is that they're essentially trying to abolish the income tax. That is pretty much that is also a major component of this, right?
I mean that gives away the game too. They're talking about the deficit. They're talking about the system being unsustainable, which I think is true. I think they're right. The system doesn't work. Sure, but you haven't heard them talk about canceling their own tax cuts for their class.
No,
68% of which go to their class. If they were really serious about an unsustainable system, they'd say, well, of course we can't take a tax cut.
Right. Exactly. You would have tariffs and you would raise their taxes. That would get you balanced a lot faster. But it's obviously not about that, as we know. All right. Kuznetsky was saying U.S. MSM propaganda has been very successful in making most Americans prejudiced against brown Arab peoples. Yes, it has.
Yep.
Absolutely. Fat, not so fat. European Union is planning a reciprocal tariff on our tech sector. Kind of hope it happens. I'm making money shorting the market. There you go. Fat, not so fat. Gavin Hillick, appreciate the donation. Soros backwards is Soros coincidence. Yeah, that's good. I like that. I'm going to put America-made stickers on products to avoid the higher prices from tariffs. There you go. David Santucci, where will all the money we'll supposedly make off tariffs come from? It's a tax on working people, but they're not calling it that. Well, some people are, even some Republicans are, because they're afraid that their voters are going to see it that way.
But Bessent in the Tucker interview makes the claim that, you know, partly it gets absorbed by the exporting nation, partly it gets absorbed by the importer, so very little gets passed on to the consumer. History does not demonstrate that at all.
Right. Ficus, I was at a hands-off in my area and felt like 2016, except for all the Ukraine flags. I was one of the only people with a Palestine flag. Nonetheless, I got several free Palestines and nods. Well, that's good, Ficus. Thank you for that. Nina Kant, this is starting to sound familiar, like when they said NAFTA would bring better jobs. Everything was going to get better. How the hell can anybody believe this rich prick? Well, that's a good point, Nina. You know, I thought of the same thing. Like this whole robotics, that's like their version of that's their version of learn to code, right? Is you're all going to fix robots. We're all going to train you to fix robots. Trust us. I mean, that really is. I mean, talk about a just transition, you know, promise. I mean, that sounds like one of those.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't buy the
I'm not
rants.
going to lie to you. The coal mining jobs are not coming back, but you're going to have the clean jobs of the future.
Sometimes I can't buy the rants. I know some of my comments are colorful, but I thought this app didn't censor. WTF. I'm not sure about that, Monkey Rotary. Is it because it's censoring you, or is that what the issue is? Chinese AI and robotics will put hookers out of work, too. It's the China Belt and Booty Initiative. Good one, Eric Rousseau.
Oh, man, you got
it.
It's sad. I mean, as soon as they invented these, you saw this coming. Yeah, you got people like falling in love with their AI girlfriends, man. That's like the saddest shit I ever heard in my life.
What's that movie? That movie, Her, was very ahead of its time.
Yeah.
R. Dean W., this show Shark Tank is the example I use to explain why moving factories to the U.S. won't work. Rich investors don't want to pay higher U.S. wages. Yes, good point. My Trumper friend is pushing healthcare savings accounts now. Shake my head. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. John M. in Minnesota, Powell Memorandum was written in 1971. Republicans sure know how to play the long game.
Yep.
Cole 3000
like
says...
China.
Yes, indeed. Cole 3000 says there's a prominent wing of MAGA, Cernovich and recent Tucker guest Kurt Mills, that says Reagan, Thatcher, HW, and W are much more to blame for the current wreckage than Clinton, Obama, and Biden. I mean, I think they all are. I mean, certainly Bill Clinton. Yeah. And I would say Barack Obama for squandering the mandate to turn a page on all that. For sure.
So somebody in the chat said Japan's down 12%, the Japanese market.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the scene tomorrow. It's going to be quite the morning to wake up.
I also in my in my research, one of the articles mentioned that the amount of capital lost in the markets in 2 days is 5 times the entire trade deficit.
Wow. All right, folks, we're going to keep on moving along here. This is a quick one, but let's mark it on the calendar. Today's April 6th. I don't know if this came out April 4th, April 3rd, what the day was, but certainly less than 100 days it took to claim victory over the Dave Smith type libertarian sort of caucus.
I can't believe he turned on Cooper like that. He's like, you know, until I opened his garage door, he was like, don't, and all the Nazi memorabilia. I couldn't believe
exactly. It. Yeah. Well, this is not
see that coming.
Yeah. Well, this is not a Darryl Cooper analysis, but this is basically Dave Smith. Hey, credit to him that we didn't have to include him in our last segment about COPE, right? I will say that for Dave Smith. But here he is. So this is our "We Told You So" moment. You know how Kamala had her big "I told you so" moment. This is the Due Dissidents "We Told You So" moment. So here's Dave Smith on the first weeks of the Trump administration.
Director of National Intelligence was going to be being better than Tulsi. Couldn't imagine Director of National Intelligence was going to be being better than Tulsi Gabbard. Head of the FBI being better than Kash Patel. Or the Health Secretary being better than Bobby Kennedy. You got Tulsi cheering on leveling an apartment building. Missile guy back to his apartment building where his girlfriend lives. So we leveled the building, and she's sending like thumbs up emojis. You got every time I hear from Kash Patel lately, it's never about the criminals in government anymore. He was on a goddamn media tour for 2 years. Everything he ever said was that there's all these criminals in the FBI. Got to get these people who committed all these heinous crimes against our republic. not talking about that anymore today, then Bobby Kennedy is out fighting the real health crisis, which is anti-Semitism. Looking around the administration at this point, I think we got the positives out of Donald Trump that we would get, but man, this all just points in such a bad direction. I knew I would be disappointed, but it is on the level of a Greek tragedy that these guys had this mandate and this opportunity, and they're just fucking it all up.
Well, score one for those who have been saying for quite a while, Donald Trump is not opposing the deep state. He's an option for the deep state.
Yep. No lies detected there. No lies detected there. I really have no notes for Dave. But it is surprising that Donald Trump came in guns blazing to the point where he alienated that part of his coalition so quickly. You know, Dave Smith is an example. Clint Russell, another kind of Mises Caucus libertarian type, has been saying, you know, the same thing, just horribly disappointed, not just in Trump, but in these mavericks who he brought in. I mean, these people, the Tulsis, the Kash Patels, the RFKs, they were supposed to be the silver linings. Now, I never saw them that way.
No.
You know, I don't mean to brag, but I kind of do. I never saw them that way. And I always knew this was going to be the result. I just didn't expect things would sour this quickly.
Yeah, I seem to recall we did a whole piece about how Tulsi Gabbard looks more like an op than a maverick. If you actually look at her history and how she's been on every side of every issue, that's probably why you shouldn't be going on the air and gassing these people up and endorsing them. If you're trying to make a career in politics by sucking up to these people, you probably shouldn't go out and say things like that because it might come back on your face this way. It's not like all of those signs were not there. Like, what are we, fucking geniuses? We're like, you know, we're a couple of tour guides, man. We don't know shit, but we do this.
Of
like,
course.
It was obvious these people were going to fuck everybody in the ass the second they got in office.
I mean, Kash Patel, yeah. I mean, Kash Patel, it's not a minor detail that the man wrote a children's book about Donald Trump and
lied like a rug
himself.
In his
too.
In his confirmation hearing.
That too.
He said he didn't know who a guy that he appeared on this podcast like 8 times.
Right.
He didn't know who the guy was. I listened to his book so that I could engage with people who were supporting him. Like, okay, so what do they say? You know, I mean, what he said about the intelligence services being corrupt, I didn't disagree with, but like all of these people, he's so partisan, like arguing the liberals are worse. That's ridiculous if you know the first thing about the history of the intelligence services. Like, an honest critique is they're all serving the intelligence services. That's not his critique. He's like, yeah, right. The Republicans kind of, but those liberals. Right. I mean, this was predictable. It's all good as long as his team's in charge of it. And that was what we predicted because the guy wrote a fucking children's book with himself as a wizard protecting King Donald. What did you think this guy was going to be like as FBI director?
Well, yeah, this is what I mean when I say like that's a bigger tell than a lot of people made it out to be, because, you know, fealty to Trump in that way means you are going to be executing first and foremost the imperatives of Donald Trump, which means what Donald Trump's mission becomes is what your mission turns into. Like, what Donald Trump's goals and priorities become yours, and what are Donald Trump's priorities? Right. What are his priorities? His priorities now are punching down at immigrants and student protesters and making their lives as hellish as they can. And that is where law enforcement has directed its focus as of now. So yeah, what Dave Smith says, where's all this talk about criminals in government? Well, we got a lot of criminals in government. The only difference is now the criminals in government are working for the king.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, they purged all the disloyal FBI guys, and now they have their team in there. What else left is there to do? What swamp is there left to drain? This is the new swamp. This is what we told you. Yes, they're going to purge the old scumbags, and they're going to enlist their own scumbags to make life hell, not for the corrupt and the connected, but for the most vulnerable people in the society, because that's what fascists do. Fascists are bullies who beat up on people with no money and with no power. And that's what this mass deportation is about, broadly speaking. And now, especially, you see a microcosm of that honing in on these students, some of them with visas, some of them with green cards, some of them with American spouses. Doesn't matter. That's the priority of the FBI and the DOJ, because that's the priority of Donald Trump. When you appoint rank loyalists like that, it's not difficult to predict which direction they're going to go, because Donald Trump's been signaling this since November of 2022, since he announced he was running again.
Right. I'm sorry. It's not like this wasn't all very obvious. You got Crazy Eyes Patel went on an interview, said it's time we prioritize Israel. You got that paired with Pam Bondi, who said she was going to weaponize the FBI against student protesters. She said that. So if those are not your values and you were running around talking these people up, you need to do some self-examination, man. Like, I get it. Everybody wants a white knight. Everybody wants to believe that this revolution is going to be the good one, and they want something to cheer for. But it was not hard to see where they were going. They literally told you where they were going. Tulsi fucking Gabbard?
Right.
Tulsi Gabbard? Tell me one issue where you can tell me something she said she believed, and I will find you a clip of her saying the opposite of that. There is literally no issue you can't find her having been on every side of. It's a revelation to you. She has no integrity.
Right.
You didn't see that coming? RFK? It takes a real man to take a bear in his mouth. That guy? That guy? You're surprised? You're surprised Mr. Rabbi Shmuley is my buddy?
Right.
You're surprised that he turned around and prioritized anti-Semitism in the Health and Human Services Department? And I know people don't like to hear this, but yeah, he's right about some of the area of expertise. I know a lot of people say, well, he's in Health and Human Services, whatever. I felt that way to an extent, because I agree with him about some things like the American diet and food dyes and that kind of thing. He has a lot of legitimately batshit ideas about medicine as well. Nobody wanted to look at that because everybody wants a white knight. The fact that he never really ran this kind of an organization. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, it's good to have outside the box thinkers to an extent. But when you have somebody with absolutely no experience who frankly seems a little nuts, that's when you get the guy fires a bunch of people and turns around a couple weeks into the job and says, yeah, we fired about 20% by accident.
By accident, yeah, I was just going to say. They fired 20% by accident, yeah.
By accident. What if this happened under a Democrat?
Right.
What if this happened under a Democrat? That the Democrats, Levine, the trans appointee, what if they fired all these people and then said, oh, oopsie.
Right.
Oopsie. The chuds would be all over it. RFK does it. They don't want to talk about it. You got a bunch of people of very low character, who in some cases maybe ops. I think Tulsi's an op. I think she works for the deep state. I did an entire segment about that. RFK's a fucking wacko. And so's Crazy Eyes Patel. And you could have seen all of this very clearly before they ever took these jobs.
Yes, indeed. All right. Jake, why don't we put our scroll up, please, for the patrons. So, folks, if you like what we do here, you can help us do more of it by becoming a patron at patreon.com/DoDissidents. You can also join our Substack at DoDissidents.substack.com. Or you can join our locals. Go to DoDissidents.locals.com. We have 1,400 strong in the Rumble chat. If you're on Rumble, you can just click right under the video player and click that bright red join button. That takes you to our locals page. Everybody else, we got 3,200 strong on YouTube. That's the link, DoDissidents.locals.com. For $5 a month, you get quite a bit. You get call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday evening. Hey, tonight's Sunday, which means there will be a Q&A on the show after the program tonight, exclusively on Rumble.
And tonight's intermission is a tribute to the gone too soon late, great Val Kilmer.
That's right. So we do have an intermission in advance of the Rumble.
Including Quentin Tarantino's breakdown of the underlying themes of Top Gun, which is pretty funny.
There you go. So, yes, you get call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday night. You get your name up in lights here on the Patreon scroll. You get bonus live streams, 2 per month, 1 film club live stream, 1 content and call-in live stream. You also get live stream access to our pre-recorded full-length interviews, as well as full ad-free replays of every live stream the day after they air live. People are loving that feature. It comes in especially handy when we break the stream up. So tonight, the final segment of the show before Q&A is going to be done exclusively on Rumble. And so the full ad-free live stream replay really comes in handy for instances where we split the streams up, because you get the full stream ad-free, no interruptions, emailed to you the day after the show airs live. So if you miss a show or you only catch part of it and you want to watch the replay, you get almost like your own private video file of sorts sent to you. So dudissidents.locals.com. It's just $5 a month. Your support is what fuels the show. We absolutely could not do this without our members. So thank you all very much for your support. Okay, RBGH fam, it's a conflict of interest to ask China to build our drones and robots. Overtaxing elites won't work. They will just leave and hide money in assets. The Amazing Blumpkin. Where is the Amazing Blumpkin? Sorry, what happened here? Nope. Where'd it go? There it is. Wasn't Reagan's program called The New Squeal? There you go. Thank you, the Amazing Blumpkin. John Trevina, thanks to the $4.99. Director Adam Curtis made a film about the neoliberal era called Hyper-Normalization. He'd be an interesting guest. Thank you, John. Brad Gelbert, Trump creating the Club of Rome's regional zones. RBGH fam, the U.S. should slowly move all their manufacturing out of China to India and Mexico. Tariff national security items, steel, medicine, etc. built here. I used to teach economics. Thank you, Janice Anderson. Those who can do, those who can't teach. Right. Nothing against legit teachers, just experts who ride credentials, not work. Sparky, thanks for the $10. There are many Trump bots on the internet in order to fool President Trump that MAGA has much more tolerance for his foreign policy than they actually have. See them driven before you and hear the lamentations of their women. Thank you, Sparky. Sparky says
to crush the financial markets, to drive the old ladies into the streets, and to hear the lamentations of the school children.
Yeah, right. Lindsey Graham introduced Pete Hegseth to the media around 2010. Prior to that, Hegseth was Graham's joy boy. Oh, Rodrigo Mendez, thanks to the $4.99, took a mental break from politics back when you guys were at 8K subs. Wow, you guys took off in subs. Wow, so you've took quite the long break there. Are the Vanguard and Kyle Kalinske still a joke? Well, I think we have something on the Vanguard in the Taibbi segment.
We have a rare reference to the Vanguard in the Taibbi segment.
Yeah. Eric Main, thanks for the $2. Support Benny. Hands off my Johnson rally soon. IndyCom, been watching for a while. About time I chipped in. Thank you, IndyCom. Appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
Very much appreciate that. All right, EO Shush. Tariffs work. Look at China, but it does take decades and massive infrastructure support by the government and investment in the people who become the workers. Right. We would be China now if we expanded the New Deal. Well, that's the other thing. They're not investing in the people or the workers at all. They're doing the exact opposite. But instead, we dug a hole with free trade and trickle-down economics, and Trump's plan will only destroy the economy. And the only way trickle-down sort of works is because we have the petrodollar. Janet Tillis, I was about to ask Batia to sell me dope. She looks so street. There you go. Thank you. Ex-Barbarian, point fentanyl, ignore American co-Sackler's oxy crisis. Yes, to build manufacturing infrastructure before tariffs. This is just the 1% cannibalizing what crumbs are left. They know these jobs gone. Yes, I agree with that. 100%. Yes, they know that. Absolutely.
Like they can't actually believe the factories are going to come flooding back into the U.S. They can't believe that.
Right. FYI, Salt Lake City is a very liberal city in a very red state, guys. Well, it's very Mormon. Is it like a liberal? Is it like blue? I don't know. I never heard that.
Didn't they just move Sundance out of Utah to Colorado because it's too right wing?
Oh, did they?
Yes, I believe so.
That's interesting. EO Shush, Doge tariffs, federal funding for colleges is about Trump getting control of the money to use for leverage for his own power. If the economy collapses, he will control the bailouts. Kiss Trump's ring. Thank you, EO Shush. The Japanese and South Korean markets have opened, and they are tumbling, says May Jest. Thank you.
I'm sure.
Yep. Okay. All right. We're going to move on to the Taibbi lawsuit.
They must have just heard about DeepSeek. That must be what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, Taibbi is not the only one who worked on the Twitter files, but I guess he was the most visible one. They have had quite a hard-on for him for a long time. So this was Stacey Plaskett when they did Jim Jordan convened a hearing about government censorship. This is really where they started going after him hard. Plaskett, by the way, worth noting, was Jeffrey Epstein's congresswoman for his little island getaway. Solicited him for campaign funds. So this is what she said when Taibbi first appeared before them.
For his work. This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now. There are many legitimate questions about where Musk got the financing to buy Twitter. We know for a fact that foreign countries like Qatar.
All right, so Taibbi did not let that so-called journalist thing pass.
Taibbi, I've been a reporter for 30 years and a staunch advocate of the First Amendment. Much of that time was spent at Rolling Stone magazine. Ranking Member Plaskett, I'm not a so-called journalist. I've won the National Magazine Award, the I.F. Stone Award for Independent Journalism, and I've written 10 books, including 4 New York Times bestsellers. I'm now the editor of the online magazine Racket on the independent platform Substack.
All right. Now, I'm not sure if it was right after this congressional testimony or if it was another one. He appeared before them more than once. But the IRS literally went to Matt Taibbi's house after he testified, after one of his testimonies, which Jim Jordan went to his credit and investigated, forcing the IRS to change their policy of unannounced visits. But that's an example where people want to talk about, hey, Trump is creating a fascist country. I mean, to the extent that he is, and I think in many ways he is, the Democrats opened the door to this. This is under Joe Biden, that the IRS went to the house of a journalist after he testified on behalf of their political enemies, or that's how they perceived it. So Mehdi Hasan, in the way in his way, did a kind of ambush interview where he took some minor discrepancies of acronyms in the Twitter files and blew this up as Matt Taibbi perjuring himself, which AOC, who people are now trying to build up as the great left-wing hope, jumped right on. This also implicates House Republicans as well, who launched an entire oversight hearing and investigation based on these errors. Did GOP oversight not fact check or double verify any of these claims or read the reports cited before wasting tons of public time and dollars on it? Now, again, as I recall, because Matt wrote a whole article about it, it was literally he got one letter wrong in one of these acronyms. That's what this was all about. But the essence, the underlying reporting, they weren't able to poke any holes in. I mean, they claim to, but they can't back it up. They took it even further. Plaskett sent a letter to him threatening him with jail time for perjury. But they're not done. They're not done. Showing that the Democrats learned absolutely nothing about their own repulsiveness from the fact that they lost again to a game show host, a rather repulsive one, somebody most of the country doesn't even like. Ranking member Kamlager Dove, who knew? I've never heard of this woman before.
Yeah, I've
we
never
cover
heard of her either.
politics.
Yeah.
I figure she was trying to make a name for herself here because she doesn't have one. Calls GOP witness
No
Matt
one's ever heard of her.
Taibbi. Nobody's ever heard. Everybody's saying, "Who is that?
Who is that?
Who is that?" Calls GOP witness Matt Taibbi a serial sexual harasser and enters articles into the congressional record about his history as a sex pest. This is Aaron Rupar covering this uncritically, not questioning the claim, backing it up. So let's see what she said.
Relitigating a made-up conspiracy theory about a part of the State Department that no longer exists to distract from the dumpster fire foreign policy this administration is pursuing, and elevating a serial sexual harasser as their star witness in the process. Mr. Chair, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 articles about the Republican witness Matt Taibbi. The first is a Chicago Reader article entitled 20 Years Ago in Moscow, Matt Taibbi was a misogynist a-hole and possibly worse, and a Washington Post article titled The 2 Expat Bros Who Terrorized Women Correspondents in Moscow. This hearing could not be more out of...
Okay, so she actually responded to Aaron Rupar's tweet of this, saying, after this, Republicans gave Matt Taibbi time to defend himself. It's telling that he didn't. Well, you know what's more telling? That you were stupid enough to put that in writing. As Matt explains, there is not much a person can say to a member of Congress hiding behind the speech and debate clause of the Constitution. I can, however, respond to a member arrogant enough to repeat defamatory claims on social media. See below for the $10 million libel lawsuit filed today. Hear, hear, Matt. Congratulations. It's about time. So I don't know this account, but Petunis World did a pretty good job of breaking it down. So thank you very much for that. So here's a little bit about what the lawsuit is. On April 3rd, 2025, journalist Matt Taibbi filed a $10 million federal lawsuit against Representative Sidney Kamlager Dove, Democrat, California, ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on South and Central Asia, for slander and libel. Taibbi's suit stems from Kamlager Dove's April 1st statement during a censorship hearing where she called him a serial sexual harasser and entered 2 articles into the congressional record, a Chicago Reader piece and a Washington Post article alleging his history as a sex pest. The articles reference Taibbi's time at The Exile, a Moscow-based newspaper he co-edited in the late 1990s. A 2000 book, The Exile, Sex, Drugs, and Libel in the New Russia, co-authored with Mark Ames, contains satirical passages about sexual harassment that Taibbi says were fictional. He's denied any misconduct, and no woman has ever formally accused him of harassment. Taibbi apologized in 2017 for the cruel and misogynistic language, but insists the claims are baseless. Now, remember, at this time when they were really trying to destroy his career, he was still trying to play nice with the libs. I'm sure he would not apologize today for what was clearly a satiric book. If you remember the witch hunt atmosphere at that time, I'm sure it was pretty scary. He was still employed at Rolling Stone back then.
No, nowadays he'd get canceled if he apologized.
Yeah, exactly. But this is how scummy this attack is. Like, this was debunked quite a while ago. And to make matters worse, this whole accusation came about because a right-wing influencer had a grudge against him for making fun of him in that magazine.
Right.
Quote, I was never harassed by Matt Taibbi, nor did I see him sexually harass anyone at work or outside work either. There were 2 Mashas. So the other Masha told Paste in a phone interview. It was a ridiculous passage written by Mark, Taibbi didn't even write any of the offending passages. She and Taibbi, whom she described as naturally shy, would end up dating for 7 years, a relationship she recalls fondly despite a bad breakup. These claims that Matt would do this stuff are ridiculous, she said. I left the exile because we started dating, and Matt was worried about impropriety. He didn't even ask me out at work. Matt is a fundamentally decent and kind person. The woman referred to as Sveta, whose last name has also been omitted for professional reasons, also told Pace that the encounter described in Ames's passage never happened, and that neither Taibbi nor Ames ever acted inappropriately towards her or any other woman in the office. It never happened, she wrote over email. When asked if the two editors ever ignored impropriety by other male staffers, she told us there was nothing to ignore. In other words, the exile's work environment was not hostile for women. That's about as clear a debunking as you could get. They literally called the women who worked in the office in Russia, and they all said, no, that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, Paste was able to trace the effort to cast Exile as a factual memoir back to an alt-right author named Jim Goad in 2011. Goad, whose magazine, Answer Me, had been parodied by the Exile, began tweeting about the Natasha passages and tagging the outlets that hosted Ames' work or had him on as a contributor. Now, this whole thing really got ignored until Taibbi's book, I Can't Breathe, about the murder of Eric Garner was about to come out. And again, this was the height of Me Too. So all of the liberal outlets picked up on it as a kind of Me Too feeding frenzy without actually investigating it. Obviously, the right-wing outlets with that book coming out had their own motives. So this is Taibbi explaining what the book is. And now, actually, I've never read it. I'm kind of curious now. The paper was to be a mirror of the typical expatriate in exile who was a pig of the highest order, Taibbi explained. He was usually a Western consultant who made big bucks teaching Russians how to fire workers or privatize markets in the name of progress, then at night banged hookers and blew coke and speed. The reality is most of the Westerners in town were there to turn Russia into a neoliberal puppet state by day and get laid and shit-faced by night. So the paper was a kind of sarcastically over-enthusiastic celebration of this monstrous community's values. So in other words, it was basically an exercise in gonzo journalism, right? It was mixing some factual events with doing it from the point of view of this horrible American expatriate community that he describes in that way. The claims that this book were true have been retracted in several outlets, including The Guardian wrote an article attacking Taibbi for it, and then printed this upon further investigation. This article was amended on 10th April 2018 to remove a reference to Matt Taibbi in a book he co-authored. In October 2017, Grove Publishing added clarification about the book, saying, quote, this book combined exaggerated, inventive satire and nonfiction reporting. At the time, several reviews indicated that the book was satire. The women referred to in the passage have since said in an interview that they have never been harassed by Taibbi, something that the Democrats certainly knew before they tried to resurface this in this hearing. So here's Greenwald weighing in. You're a pathetic smear artist exploiting Me Too as if you give a shit about it. Can't wait until you cheer Andrew Cuomo's candidacy the way Dems cheer Biden and Bill Clinton. You spread a discredited and retracted story, and now you're getting justifiably sued. You are a damn, this is Pod for Truth, Justice, and Survival for All. You are a damn good reason why the so-called Democratic Party should be buried next to the Whig Party. If you believe what you said about Taibbi, you're a moron. And if you didn't, you are a liar. Either way, I hope he sues the crap out of you. Your wish is granted, sir. Now, hey, we don't really take shots at these guys these days. It's like kicking a drugged up monkey. But this happened to come up in my research, and I just have to include this. So this is a passage here from the book that we now know was written by Mark Ames and was well established all the way back in 2017, 8 years ago, that this was satirical fiction. The Vanguard nonetheless tweets it, saying, Matt Taibbi, in his own words, as he sues a woman for calling him a serial sexual harasser. If these guys were not as dumb as they are, I would say they're being paid, but they're definitely dumb enough to come up with that take on their own, which one does not preclude the other. They may still be getting paid.
I don't think so. I think they're eating out on Cenk Uygur's lost subscriptions now. I think that provides them enough of a cushion. Yeah, I would say that. I'll give them that. I think it's organic in that respect. But yeah, man, I mean, they just cannot. I mean, this goes back to the hands-off march. They just cannot help but reveal what snakes they are every opportunity they get. And to put that in, to take that swipe that you're a serial sex pest or sex harasser,
which
whatever
they
she called them.
certainly know has been disproved. They certainly know that.
No, but they get points. They score brownie points with each other when they talk like that. It's all signaling. It's like a horse baying, the way you used to describe it. You know, when you behave in a certain way, when you say certain words, you signal to the rest of the crowd that you're in the crowd. And that's all that is. And, you know, it makes sense that a person who very few people even very involved in the political space have never heard of would say something like that, because that's the kind of shot
and it was the same thing with Plaskett.
For yourself. Plaskett too.
Nobody ever heard of her until that.
Exactly. So you try to create these big moments in order to make a name for yourself, and in this case, you're just rehashing what was, I think, a pretty absurd story when it came out. I mean, it was always an absurd story. Now it's even more absurd. Now it's almost 10 fucking years later.
Right. And you're entering these debunked
repeatedly.
articles into the record. No, these people are the scum of the earth. And this is why I say the best thing the Democrats could do is just run as generic Democrats and hide until after the election. Don't say anything, because they are so fucking repulsive. They make the Trump people look good by comparison. That is the whole secret of why they swept the House and the Senate, because look at the alternative. It's these people. It's these disgusting, lying hall monitor creeps.
Right.
Good for Matt. I'm glad he's doing this. You know, the Van Boys are lucky he's not what they claim he is, because they're opening themselves up for a lawsuit. But I know Matt is way too decent to sue Beavis and Butthead for their excesses. But this Congresswoman, yeah, man, I think he'll win. I think he'll win. I mean, that's clearly liable. You're making a claim that has long been debunked with no factual basis for making the claim. Good for him, man. And I hope this puts the fear of God into some of the rest of them that have been doing this to witnesses. It doesn't matter whether you don't like the witnesses. That is the kind of abuse of power that allowed Trump, criminal abuser of power that he is, to present himself as an alternative who would restore freedom.
Yeah, and this is kind of a decade in the making for Matt Taibbi. I mean, we've had the pleasure of talking to him a few times. He's a very nice person who probably has thought about doing something like this in the past, but just didn't do it. Just out of decency. But you know, you push someone to a point. At a certain point, yeah, you have to lay it down. And yeah, I mean, look, that's the only power we have over people like this. Like you have to use the courts to go after them if they wrong you in that way, because otherwise they're just completely untouchable. And you can't just let the government make shit up about you. That's how you end up in El Salvador. You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, you want to see the arrogance. Now, this could be a lawyer said, don't take it down because you'll look guilty. That was still up. as
Right.
of this afternoon when I was working on the piece. She had not taken that down.
Right. Yep. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, good for him. Go get him.
Yep. Good luck, Matt.
Good luck. If you win, you could give us like 2.5%.
Give us a little
less
escarole,
like 2.5
little
is fine.
kick back to your friends at Due Dissidence over
Exactly.
here.
We gave you some good
I
press
got
here.
your
We did our
book back
part.
here.
Yeah,
After
exactly.
we've sold at least 6 books by now.
We advertised the book.
Give us a little cut.
Couple points. It's all right. Don't worry about it. 2.5 is fine. It doesn't have to be more.
2.5 points. That's
2.5
it.
points is
a
fine.
little taste.
Yeah, a little,
We just
a
want
little taste is
we
fine.
just
It's
want to
all-
wet our beaks.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. IndieCom, been watching for a while. About time I chipped in. I saw that one already. Thank you. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Keep in mind, Israel has killed many more Americans than Iran. Remember the USS Liberty. Jude, thanks for the $1.99, says Benny equals Les Lisps to double down on his love of women. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Remember, friends of the show, the FDA, were the ones who released the scourge of fentanyl in the U.S. population. Not Mexico, not China. Snork Y2K, I used to build factories. I'm a teacher now. Those of us who built the big factories are mostly retired now. There are a few schools left that teach electronics manufacturing technicians. Yeah, so, that's a good point, too. Where are they going to teach these people to do it? It's just an absurd plan. It's obviously not going to happen. And like I said, just taking what he said at face value, the inefficiency of it gives away that it's not going to happen. Yeah, so the workers aren't going to do the jobs in the factories. We're going to build robots to do the jobs that the workers are going to do. But don't worry,
the jobs
the
are going to
workers
come into servicing the robots.
Yeah, the workers are going to end up servicing the robots. Okay, so why'd you go through the process of building the robots if you're not going to shrink the labor force? Isn't the whole point of building robots so that you have to hire less workers? Like, it's so comical. Sparky, F Israel, thank you, Sparky. Rentier Oligarch, I like that screen name. The only reason they want to reindustrialize is to make war on China. Thank you. Sparky says, ignorance and arrogance weaponized in a lame attempt to preserve neocolonialism in a white man's burden kind of way. Thank you, Sparky. All right, we'll take some Rumble rants over here. Luis de la Cruz. I pay $24 a month for Netflix and $15 for Due Dissidence. I get way more bang for my buck from you guys. Well, thank you, Luis.
Thank you.
Here's an extra buck. Keep it up. Thank you very much. Goo81, regarding breaking Gretzky's record, a lot of Canadians turned on Gretzky because of the 51st state and friends with Donald Trump. Today's game does not help as he sat next to Kash Patel at the game. Oh, really?
Oh, really?
He was with Kash Patel at the game?
I heard this, yeah.
Wow, I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that. I heard it was like MAGA.
I heard he was a Trump guy. I didn't know Kash Patel was at the game with him. He was probably searching for migrants he can lock out of the country. When Ardeen W., when the reasonable allies start walking away from the man with power, all allies he'll have left is the unhinged fanatical fascist. Thank you. EO Shush, thanks for the $5. Due Dissidence is right on the issues before everybody else. I may even get tired of you guys being right, and I may even say, please, it's too much of you being right. I can't take it anymore. That's right. Too much winning. Thank you very much, EO Shush. Appreciated. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We're on our own. Thank you. Ken Texican, $50. Let's get the cowbell for Ken Texican. Appreciate that, my friend. Maverick in Trump's administration. Yeah, right. Nothing but a whole bunch of APAC button-busted, stump-broke cows. I like that. It's a good phrase. Richard King wasn't New York's last cowboy. Keep sinking spurs, DD. Thank you, Ken Texican. Appreciate that generous donation. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, very much for being here. I saw some people rumbling in the chat. Yes, the Japanese market plunges 8% after open, and apparently they closed it.
They triggered the instant
the emergency, right?
Emergency brakes.
Right. Yeah. Well,
that's not what it's called, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what it basically serves as, the panic button.
All right. I got to say, man, if anyone wants to see what we're talking about when we say the peasant mind, look at some of the comments on the video we just dropped about Florida wanting to use child labor, in which we very clearly said children, teenagers can already work part-time. Like, you can already do that. what they're talking about is kids in high school being able to work full time. There's an old Monty Python sketch. If we didn't have Val Kilmer, I would have put this in tonight. Reference to that. The Four Yorkshiremen. It's known as, they did it originally with Marty Feldman, actually, where it's all of these guys who are now pretty well off, all going on about how bad their childhoods were and trying to one up each other. Yeah, we lived under a top, but it was home to us. Oh, you had a top. We had to live in the lake. We'd climb out of the lake in the morning. Like that's what these people. Yeah, well, my grandfather walked 6 miles.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. Pretty bad scene. Pretty bad scene.
Look up, for anyone who hasn't seen it, look up The Four Yorkshiremen. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, that's on YouTube. Yep. All right. We will move right on along here. Okay, folks. So this really is a good demonstration of the kind of people who are running the government now. Just absolutely remorseless psychopaths. So here's End Wokeness, as we call it, the original scumbag douchebag. End Wokeness tweets out, Judge Paula Zinnes orders Trump, or Zinnes, I don't know how to say it. I'll call her Zinnes to be easy. Judge Paula Zinnes orders Trump to return a suspected MS-13 member from an El Salvadoran jail. Breaking, April 4th. He tweets that out. Now, the president, not our president, the Salvadoran president, Nayib Bukele, tweets out the sort of cockeyed rabbit meme. Like, what? Why would I do that? Right? Just giving a real smart-ass response to this judge's order. Elon Musk amplifies that, of course, with a laugh emoji. So, just to recap, judge orders the return of a, quote, suspected MS-13 gang member, and you have the president of El Salvador, along with essentially the most powerful man on earth, confidant to President Donald Trump, Elon Musk, basically laughing that off, basically mocking that post. So
isn't this the same guy who was practically crying about his stock price?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wanted all the empathy in the world for that. Laughing at this. So William Wallace Welker asks Grok, Twitter's AI, is this guy that the judge ordered returned a citizen of El Salvador? So see, he asks, okay, so who is the person? Because End Wokeness, of course, and this is why I say bullshit travels very fast on X. There's no link to any source. There's no real information about the person in question. And so one of the commenters asked Twitter's AI for, some more context. And so Grok responds, hey, thanks for tagging me in this. So about that guy the judge ordered to be returned, yeah, he's a citizen of El Salvador. His name is Kilmar Abrego-Garcia, which may be familiar to those who watch our show on a regular basis. And he was living legally in the U.S. with a work permit until he got, wrongly deported back to El Salvador. Apparently, it was all a big mix-up, and now a U.S. judge, Paula Zinnes, is demanding he be brought back by April 7th. That would be tomorrow at this recording. The Trump administration's been pushing these hardline deportation policies, and this case is causing quite the stir, especially with El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, getting involved. It's a mess, really, but that's the gist of it. Stay tuned. It's bound to get more interesting. So, yes, for those who watch our show on a regular basis, you will remember we did a fairly lengthy segment about this when it broke. This was the case where an admitted by the Trump administration itself, administrative error sent a Maryland father to a Salvadoran prison. He was rounded up outside a Home Depot. He had tattoos that the guys he was rounded up with said were gang tattoos, that he was a gang member. In fact, I'm sure he has tattoos, but this I might be confusing the crown the crown tattoos was the hairdresser. See, there's so many of these errors that it's hard to keep track of. This is the guy who got ratted on wrongfully by the guys who he was rounded up with outside the Home Depot, and the cops said they found no evidence that he was in any gang or any criminal organization of any kind. But he was sent to CCOT mistakenly. And yes, here's the actual story of what happened. Judge reaffirms order to return Maryland man erroneously deported to El Salvador. So this is the latest update on this. A federal judge is sticking by her demand that the Trump administration seek the immediate return of a Maryland man erroneously sent to El Salvador, where he is being held in one of the most notoriously inhumane and dangerous prisons in the world. U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes rejected the Trump administration's entreaty, I never even knew how to say that word, to back off her Friday order, which requires the return of Kilmar Abrego-Garcia by Monday night. The Justice Department said the court had no power to order the decision and was intruding on President Donald Trump's exclusive power to direct foreign policy. But Zinnes described the erroneous deportation of Abrego-Garcia, who was under a 2019 court order not to be sent to El Salvador for fear of reprisal by a violent gang, as a grievous error that requires his return. Yes, the reason he came to America to begin with is because he was fleeing the gang.
Right. Yeah.
Defendants seized Abrego-Garcia without any lawful authority, held him in 3 separate domestic detention centers without legal basis, failed to present him to any immigration judge or officer, and forcibly transported him to El Salvador in direct contravention of immigration laws, Zinnes wrote in a 22-page opinion issued just after 1 a.m. Sunday morning. Once there, U.S. officials secured his detention in a facility that by design deprives its detainees of adequate food, water, and shelter, fosters routine violence, and places him with his persecutors. That's right. Now, by persecutors, you could mean the gang members who he was fleeing in the first place, or you could mean the El Salvadoran government. I don't know how to interpret that. Both seem fitting and valid in my view. But the crux to this story is that even when the administration admits that it made a mistake, sending a man who should not have been deported at all to COPES, you still have Elon Musk laughing about this. You still have Bukele tweeting sarcastically about this. And wokeness, he's both a moron and a liar. I don't know how much he looked into this. My suspicion is that he really doesn't care all that much about stories like this and doesn't bother researching them all that much. But certainly a guy like Elon...
It's outrage porn for chuds.
Right. It's just outrage porn for morons. But certainly Elon Musk and Bukele himself know that this is clearly in reference to an admitted mistake by the United States government. So even when they admit their error, their attitude when you ask them to fix it is just, ha, fuck you. Fuck you. What do we need to go get this guy for? Is he really worth the trouble? That's what you're dealing with, folks. Even when they admit they fucked up, they don't care.
Right.
They just don't care.
Right. You put a man in hell. And this is where, if you're getting behind these people and supporting these people, and you're assuming that that's never going to come back on you, think about how psychopathic you have to be. Suppose you had the power to take a man who was unjustly put in that environment with a stroke of a pen, with a phone call. You could free them from that situation, and you thought that was funny, the idea that you would do that. Why would you think that people like that care about you? Those are sick people. That's a level of evil that most people could never even dream of. See, this is, I mentioned the other day, if you had $500 billion, you'd want to help people with it, right? That's the catch-22. Generally, people who make $500 billion are people who don't think that way.
Right. That's how they amass that level of wealth, and in this case, influence in the first place. But just totally sociopathic, completely cruel. These are the people who are supposedly the family values people, right? This guy was a dad, right? Yep. I mean, it's absolutely depraved. Absolutely depraved. And this is why, like, you really do have to wonder how far they'll take it, because these are people who obviously have contempt for anyone who tries to check them, even when they admit that they were wrong.
Right.
Even
Right.
when they admit they fucked up.
Right.
They have nothing but disrespect for any check to their power.
Yeah, well, this is the question. You could argue they've already done it, defying the court order by not bringing people back already with, I forget the name of the judge that they're at war with.
The thin guy. I forget his name too, yeah.
Thin guy.
Bear Spock, whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, you could, Baerbock, right? You could say that they've already ignored his orders. This takes it to another level. They've got a direct judge's order. This specific guy has to be brought back. Are they going to follow the full Curtis Yarvin playbook? Anybody who hasn't looked into Curtis Yarvin, if you want to understand what this administration is doing on this end, that's the roadmap. More than Project 2025. That's the roadmap. Go into government, flood the zone, fire a bunch of people, and this is the next part. Defy court orders. When the courts say, no, this is unconstitutional, say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? This could be the case. Let's see.
Yep. Indeed. Sparky, ignorance and arrogance weaponized in a lame attempt to preserve neocolonialism in a white man burden kind of way. Thanks. I think I read that before. Herman Reed, thanks for the $7.77. Appreciate that. Soros as a palindrome is no coincidence. As above, so below. Race Car 789, thanks for the $20. That's generous of you. Enjoying the Sunday night live stream. Glad you're enjoying it. Enjoying you guys being here. Big crowd tonight. Smash that subscribe button, everybody. Smash that follow button over on Rumble. Nima PSR, sorry. Hi, guys. What do you think the deep state tried to assassinate Trump when he wasn't a threat to them? I'm starting to think maybe that was a fugazi.
Maybe it was a fugazi.
Yeah, maybe it was a fugazi.
It was a fugazi.
Josh Daniel, they commodify leftist infighting and call themselves the TMZ of the left, then argue with actual journalists and act like they're helping. Thank you, Josh Daniel. Steve McNally, thanks, Russ. I forgot about that skit. Did it as a monologue in high school, just changing hats in my head. I used to live in a shoebox in the middle of the road. Still cracks me up. Thank you.
There were 37 of us living in a rolled up newspaper at the bottom of the sewer.
Right. This fall on Fox, we've got the best in recession content, Real Houseless Wives of the Poor and Destitute, The Old Encampment, Pimp My Live-In, Camry, and Survivors Skid Row, Los Angeles. Thank you, Doc Durkin. Appreciate that. Okay. May Jest, Asian market collapse, Nikkei halts trading. There you go. Yep. I saw that. That came across my phone, actually. Thank you for that.
Let's see what that's doing to the futures while you do that.
All right. A lot of tabloid stuff on today's show. I thought you might say something about Bernie Sanders' Senate fight. What is his Senate fight? I don't even know what that is.
I mean, I saw something about stop funding Israel. I mean, I didn't even bother to look into it because Bernie Sanders is so fucking irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like, that's why. I mean, he's a clown. I don't want to give a lot of oxygen to him, honestly.
It is a bit
so
of a
he can
trashy...
sheepdog everybody back into the Democratic Party.
Come to think of it, it is a bit of a trashy show tonight. But we had some highbrow stuff in there.
We're trashy hosts.
I mean, we mixed it up a little bit. I mean, it was more lowbrow than usual, but the Bessent thing, that was substantive. That was a very scholarly
that was
segment.
pretty damn substantive, motherfucker.
Yeah, this last segment we just did was substantive. So, and obviously we have, I don't know if we'll get to it.
Now we got to do the abortion piece just because the guy said that.
Yeah, well, we also have the Israel piece too, coming up on Rumble.
And we got an Israel piece coming up, man.
All right.
Look, it can't all be grim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
depressing. Gotta do a little stuff. Yeah. And actually, man, I mean, I consider the so what would be tabloid? Like, I don't consider the Taibbi thing tabloid.
Well, this next one is kind of tabloid. So let's go. Let's do this one.
I mean, that's okay. That's tabloid. but even that, because you have an angle of who's blackmailing that guy.
Right.
I mean, as far as Russell Brand goes, Taibbi, man, I mean, the fact that the Democrats have just relentlessly gone after this guy for reporting on the Twitter files. Like, yeah, I mean, I would call that tabloid.
All right, well, let's do a tabloid one for sure.
Snow White,
This
that's
one is,
tabloid.
yeah.
That's what I would call tabloid when we cover Snow White, which we're going to do right after this.
Yeah. Yeah. Snow White gets an abortion. No.
All right, here we go. Rock and roll. Let's work out. All right, so let's look at a little timeline. Let's look at how we got here. So back in 2014, Russell Brand, man, I don't know if he was still on the junk back then, but he was on the pro-Palestine train. Russell Brand calls for Israel boycott back in 2014. Comedian urges big businesses that facilitate the oppression of people in Gaza to pull funding, and he got people to sign a petition that was successful in getting Barclays to divest from Israel. So he was actually having some impact, having some influence. 2023, he made some pretty infamous appearances. I'm not sure. Me and Keaton were going back and forth on this. I'm not sure when he did his infamous Morning Joe thing. I could swear it was like not that long before this. Keaton thinks it was years before this. I don't think so. I think it was like 2022 that he did that. But here he is on Bill Maher taking the piss, as they might say, on that Emerald Isle out of John Heilman.
Yeah.
Not known you long, but I love you already. But I have to say that it's disingenuous to claim that the biases that are exhibited on Fox News are any different from the biases exhibited on MSNBC. It's difficult to suggest that these corporations operate as anything other than mouthpieces for their affiliate owners in BlackRock and Vanguard. And unless we start to embrace, and also, mate, like just spiritually, if I may use that word in your great country, we have to take responsibility for our own perspective. I've been on that MSNBC, mate. It was propagandist nutcrackery on there. I went on a show called Morning Joe. It was absurd the way they carried on.
Good Morning Joe.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know what it was. It wasn't morning. There was no one called Joe there. No one could concentrate. They didn't understand the basic tenets of journalism. No one was willing to stick up for genuine American heroes like Edward Snowden. No one was willing to talk about Julian Assange and what he's suffered trying to bring real journalism to the American people. And I think to sit within the castle of MSNBC throwing rocks at Fox News is ludicrous.
My friend,
Make MSNBC better. Make MSNBC great again.
My friend, I would.
Okay, make Russell Brand great again. That's what I'd like to see.
We
You
covered
see
that
how
segment
much-
when it happened. Yeah.
Do you see how much lighter he seems? How much more comfortable in his body he seems? Compare that, because we're going to show the video they dropped in response to the charges that they just brought. Different person, man. Different, and not for the better. So we can't. This is probably a coincidence. You don't just throw together a documentary in a few weeks. But ironically enough, a couple of weeks after that appearance on Bill Maher, which got around, as Keaton points out, we covered it. A couple of weeks after that, these accusations get dropped. Russell Brand accused of rape, sexual assault, and emotional abuse. Now, we're not taking a position. We didn't at the time, and we don't now. Did he do it? Did he not do it? Who knows? But what I would say is this is weaponizing these accusations against him. You're talking about 20-year-old accusations that are very difficult to prove. We'll see what kind of evidence they have. I feel pretty confident in saying that if he were a lib in good standing, endorsing Joe Biden and not running around saying things like that, I don't think this would have happened. Could be wrong, but that's always been the theory we went with on the timing on this. Now, for a while, I do want to point out, he did, as late as April 2024, do a segment calling out the New York Times for not wanting to use the word genocide in its coverage. So that's a year after that, he stayed on that train. But something happened not too long before that I personally suspect is connected to later events. March 26th, Sean Diddy Combs investigation. What authorities found in home raids? They raided Diddy's house. Now, friend of show, Suge Knight, did an interview with Chris Cuomo in which he claimed that Diddy had a practice where he would make men put a hard-boiled egg up their ass. And if the shell broke, would tell them they hadn't put enough work in. They weren't ready for success in the music business. Now, we know this picture was not taken on Easter. So if somebody has an alternative explanation for why Russell Brand held an egg in several pictures with Diddy smiling ear to ear, I'd like to know what the alternative explanation is. And again, not taken on Easter. Man, not long after they raid Diddy's house, April 28th, there's Russell Brand and his tighty whities getting baptized. September 28th, I was there that day, appearing with Jordan Two-Face and doing prayers to the Lord for the January 6th defendants, and just a completely different person. Here he is, January of this year, appearing with the man some call America's rabbi.
Russ, come on, Rabbi Shmuley. Go again. What the hell? Russell Brand has made me laugh. He's giving me joy. But I love that he's Bobby's buddy. I love Bobby Kennedy. We all love Bobby. God bless you. Praise the Lord. God bless you, Russell.
Even gives one of those Elon Roman salutes there at the end. Right. Then a couple weeks after that, I'm a Christian. I believe that Israel deserves a homeland. I also believe that war and violence is wrong. So, wow, that's really different from the guy who got his followers to sign a petition to get companies to divest from Israel for its oppressive practices. This is back in 2014. I mean, as bad as things were then, nothing like what you're seeing now. And in the middle of this, singing a very different tune. Now, we have no way of knowing. Seems like he's blackmailed. I personally connect his change of heart to whatever they found at Diddy's house. As I showed you, he was still speaking out even after that raid. So who knows what they found there that they might have told him. Of course, that's speculation. That's my theory. This person, Empire of Lies, shares my theory. What kind of blackmail material does Israel have on this freak Russell Brand? One can only imagine the depravity. Indeed. Now, some people are saying that Russell Brand is the first victim of the Trump tariffs because he thought that his embrace of Zionism was going to protect him. But as soon as we hit the UK with those tariffs, boom, actor and comedian Russell Brand charged with rape, UK police announce. Everyone says Donald is particularly fond of Russell Brand and his egg-devouring skills. So this struck him particularly deeply, according to anonymous sources. Actor and comedian Russell Brand has been charged with 1 count of rape, 1 count of oral rape, 2 counts of sexual assault, and 1 count of indecent assault, the Metropolitan Police in London announced Friday. The charges relate to 4 separate women. The alleged crimes span from 1999 to 2005, authorities said. Brand is due in court in London on May 2nd. Metropolitan Police said Friday that the charges stem from an investigation that began in September 2023. That month, Britain's Channel 4 program Dispatches. Keaton, can you do something? Can you find out when that Morning Joe appearance was? I'm very curious now.
I did. I looked it up. So it was 2013. So I was right. It was a while ago.
Oh, it was that long.
Yeah, it was very long ago. Because his hair was black. I mean, yeah.
All right, you were right. I figured whatever Diddy did to him just aged him quick.
Yeah.
All right. That month, Britain's Channel 4 program Dispatches aired a documentary episode, the result of a joint investigation with the Times and the Sunday Times called Russell Brand in Plain Sight. The documentary involved 4 unnamed women who claimed they had been raped or sexually assaulted by Brand between 2006 and 2013. In October 2023, in a separate case, the Thames Valley Police in southeast England told ABC News they were also investigating allegations of harassment and stalking against Brand dating back to 2018. So here is a much more sedate, much less joyous Russell Brand. I don't know, man. Finding the Lord does not seem to have put the joy deep down in his heart the way they say it does. This is what he said.
Firstly, thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support. We're very fortunate in a way to live in a time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate, I suppose, that this is happening at a time where we know that the law has become a kind of weapon to be used against people, institutions, and sometimes entire nations that will not accept and tolerate levels of corruption that are unprecedented. I'm speaking particularly to those of you that are watching this in the UK. How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer? Now, that's just sort of general context. I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, we're just about a shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes. I want to thank all of you for your continuing support. I want to let you know that our show will be on Rumble on Monday. Thanks for your support there. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the meantime, you lot, stay free, and we will be continuing to discuss this matter. Praise the Lord.
Yeah, I do think that the justice system is probably being weaponized against him, which again, that does not in any way take a stand on whether he did it or not. I think with the Diddy stuff, there's definitely a there. What really tells me that is that he actually answered somebody in a super chat who asked him if he had ever been at a Diddy party. And Russell Brand, who at that time would have been the wild drug addict that he just described.
Right.
He said he basically pulled a Clinton. He didn't inhale. He was at the Diddy party, but he wasn't involved in any of those things. Do you believe that? You're saying that you were that way back then. So you were at these infamous bacchanalias at Diddy's house, but you were like, I'm tired. I'm tired of going home. I mean, come on. So, hey, we know what went on at these Diddy parties at this point, allegedly. By definition, that's non-consenting, but that's not what he's being prosecuted for. I'd say it's pretty clear he's being blackmailed by Zionist operatives. That's pretty obvious given his past positions as opposed to now. As far as this goes, yeah, man, if he were like a good lib in good standing supporting Keir Starmer, like, do I think that part of the deep state is being weaponized against him? Yeah, I do. Doesn't mean he didn't do it. Doesn't mean he did. He'll have his day in court.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to a case like this, you always just have to wait for the evidence. What I would say is that he definitely has been behaving like someone who expected something like this to come. Because the other part of this that you have to realize beyond just the blackmail is if you look at this video, he's clearly not in the UK, as you could tell by the scenery.
Yeah.
So where is he? Is he in the United States? If he's in the United States, then the United States government would have to extradite him to the UK in order for him to stand trial. Are they going to do that? He's made very good friends, it seems, with Don Jr. He's ingratiated himself with this crew. He was at the White House eating steak on inauguration weekend. He apparently abandoned his vegetarianism as well. So he has been acting in a way that suggests he knew this was coming. Again, it's not a commentary on whether he did it or not. You just can't go there until evidence comes out. Not saying yes or no, but he definitely sensed that this was in the
Well,
pipeline.
sure.
I think
Sure.
there's no question about that.
Now
You know,
he does-
irrespective of any blackmail, I think he knew this was happening and figured
Sure.
maybe the best chance I have at avoiding having to go and stand trial is just cozy up to this administration as much as possible so that they'll scream political prosecution, persecution, and they won't send me back. I mean, that to me seems quite likely.
Well, this administration is very much like Israel itself. It's a refuge for perverts.
Right.
They'll
yeah.
take anybody.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Well, if they'll let Balby in.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no sex crime they will not overlook. Yeah, I think that's right. He says at the end of that video he looks forward to having his day in court, but that's May 2nd.
Well, of course he's going to say that.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
He's not going to say, I'm not going. Don Jr. is going to have me protected.
No, and hey, he's got the perfect excuse. He could talk about how the UK is raiding Quaker meeting houses and they're draconian. I mean, he probably won't want to reference that because it was Palestinians. He'll reference the anti-abortion people getting harassed and it's not safe there for a Christian. And yeah, man, I mean, a lot of MAGA will probably go along with it. I mean, these people don't care. I mean, they're just like the Democrats are the same hypocrites. They'll put Bill Clinton on a stage. They know that he's sexually assaulted people. They don't care. So it's all a question of what team you're on.
Yep, exactly. Hey, folks. So we are keeping our eye on the calendar, and as winter turns to spring, we know that summer is up next, and our big summertime project for this year is going to be a documentary film on Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party. We do need to raise some funds to make that project happen, so you can help us do that by going to givesendgo.com/do dissidents. We're hoping to get that booked as soon as possible, but we do need some funds to make that happen. So givesendgo.com/do dissidents if you want to contribute to our special projects funds. This is a documentary we're really excited about. First time we interviewed Omali, I was inspired. There's all kinds of inspiration you get from people, but I was kind of artistically inspired by Omali. He's such an ethereal, sort of timeless kind of figure. And I'm like, this is
that's literally a living legend.
Yes, I mean this just says cinema right here. It's very cinematic. So we really want to do it, and we're really looking forward to doing it. We do need some help though, so if you want to chip in, givesendgo.com/do dissidents. All special project funds go towards the special project. We do not pay ourselves salary for any of that. So givesendgo.com/do dissidents to chip in. Thank you for your support. All right. What we got here? Steve McNally says, nope, sorry, got that one already. Tom, thanks for the $10 super sticker. Appreciate that. Sparky says, get your boy President Trump to replace Bessent with Brown University's Mark Blythe. Blythe knows how to recover an economy without subjecting people to crippling austerity. No gaslighting required. Thank you, Sparky. Gavin Hillock, thanks for the $5. Just can't get over Russell calling that sad gray lump of rock the Emerald Isle. It might have been a slip-up, but you're now banned from Ireland. Thank you, Gavin. The Book Nook, thanks for the $5. Please cover recent Staring Down Blackmail Brett Weinstein podcast on where the idea of amnesty for traffickers for no further blackmail is raised. Okay, we got here Speed Orbital. Don't forget Iran Flight 655. Thank you. I recall Matt mentioned the Vanguard favorably back when they co-hosted Useful Idiots. I think this helped them gain an audience. Talk about ungrateful. I think he went on their show actually way back when.
He went on their show. He did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I'm not one. Stabbed him in the back.
Furrow Queen says, I'm not one to argue with my heroes. But Elon is the most powerful man on earth, or is it Netanyahu? He's got Hungary's to pull out of the ICC so he could visit without arrest. Is nowhere safe from him. Well, that's not a surprise that Hungary pulled out. That does not surprise me at all. Let's see here. We got Tumbledye. Thanks for the $3. If the U.S. is sending people knowingly to a place that deprives people of food. How is that acceptable for any and all deportees? How is that legal? Yeah, well, this is basically like a Guantanamo Bay kind of situation.
Right. They're outsourcing cruel and unusual punishment.
Exactly. Russ wore my favorite "This Is Not a Drill" t-shirt the other day, and I missed the episode when it was live, making up for it now. Thanks, DD. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Del Cisco. Appreciate that very much. All right, what are we doing? Are we doing abortion, or are we saving abortion for Tuesday?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
I think we should go to Rumble since we have one more segment to do. We don't want to keep the callers waiting too long because we got Q&A.
That's true. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so we're going to abort. We're going to abort the final segment.
We're aborting the abortion segment.
Yeah, no, we figured that was time permitting, and we'll get to that on Tuesday because we are going to be covering the Israeli medic massacre, the massacre of the Palestinian medics at the hands of the IDF. We're doing that on Rumble because the video might get age restricted if we play it here, since there is some violent content that I don't think would break any YouTube rules, but it could get this video age restricted, which would mean very few people would get to watch it, and we don't want that to happen. So we're going to do that over on a free speech platform. So, folks, you can go to dodissidents.com/Rumble. Jake, do you have that banner ready to go? I can't find it for some reason. Do Dissidents. Here it is. DoDissidents.com/Rumble to continue the show. So we do have one more segment. It's a really important segment. It's a non-tabloid segment that we have over there. Yes. One of the more urgent segments of the evening. And so we do hope that you'll join us over there. This link here takes you directly to the live stream. So that's dodissidents.com/Rumble. I'll read a couple more Rumble rants on this side just to give you guys a head start to head on over there. And then we'll take a 5-minute intermission, which you're going to want to watch because Russell made a good one, a very fun tribute to the late, great Val Kilmer. Kay Biscaro, I hate Brazil as a movie, but I guess I can't knock its futuristic predictions. Garcia case is exactly the way that movie starts.
Yeah. It is, actually.
It is.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of that. We should do that for movie night.
Yeah, that could be. That could be something. Artie Blarty Fart Blast. I had to get up 2 hours before I went to bed and work in the coal mine before going to school. Yes, there you go. Thank you. The China shell makes sense that Gretzky is MAGA now that he's had enough brain damage. Oh, good one. Good one. Vito P says Humpty Dumpty was no Russell Brand. Cancer sucks, you guys rock. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks, we will take the rest of our Rumble rants over on the Rumble side. We have one more segment and then Q&A. So callers, please hold off on calling. I'll let you guys know when you got the go-ahead to call in. But we are going to now take a 5-minute break. And during that time, you'll be able to watch this intermission. And then after that, we have one more segment on the night, plus your calls. And by your calls, I mean Q&A callers here. Sparky stuck in one more super chat before the buzzer here with Brandon RFK Jr., both of whom had a degree of just spell my name right. It's probably not things that are just embarrassing they're blackmailed with, but stuff which could put them in prison. Not unlikely in my view. Absolutely. Yep. All right, folks, the show continues. Please join us. DoDissidents.com/Rumble. If you don't get Rumble in your area, if it is restricted or blacked out in your area, we are live on X now as well, and we will keep the X stream live. In any event, we'll see you in 5 minutes at this link, DoDissidents.com/Rumble. Till then, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.